Chapter 490. In a cafeteria of Songqing University, Lu Qing and Kai Zongming had plates of dishes placed in front of them. What did you say? Coach sure has left too? Little Ming blurted out in surprise when he heard the news. Why did it feel like all the monkeys had left after winning the national championship? Bah, who's the monkey? Senior brother Sun Jian and senior sister Lin Hua had left the martial arts club. The grim smiler Lin Ke had returned to Shushan's study to recuperate. It was said that he wouldn't be back. Now even Coach Shi had left Songqing University. If it weren't for Cheng, the other members of the martial arts club would have suspected that they had entered the wrong door after their summer vacation. Yeah. Lu Qing ate a mouthful of rice and swallowed it along with the shredded pork in his mouth. He smiled and said, "Isn't this normal? Isn't it enough for a mighty one with physical invulnerability to play with us for 2 years? Don't worry, the school will find a teacher with martial arts to do part-time work, but he will mainly be the leader. Most of the time, I'll still be the one guiding you guys. I'm a new inhuman, and a heavenly son of the age. It's enough to guide you guys." Damn Qing, you're so proud of yourself. Kai Zongming criticized him angrily. The worry in his heart dissipated. But don't you have to fly to and from America every month to be a flying man? In order to maintain their relationship, Qing had to work very hard. Half a month to guide you guys and half a month to practice on my own. You see, my master doesn't usually guide you and only occasionally corrects you guys. Since everyone is already at the entry level and has already learned what you need to learn, there's not much more to teach. At most, I'll take some time out to share my actual combat experience with you guys. As for the freshmen, Senior Li Mao's basic skills are very solid. Daily supervision shouldn't be a problem. At this point he added, by the way, I won't be participating in most of the matches. I'll be doing some self-cultivation. With the current strength of the members of the martial arts club, as long as we don't meet a team with a dance stage member, we'll be able to win. That's true. I've met everyone these 2 days and even sparred with senior brother Li Mao. He's a little stronger than me and should be at the top of the professional 9th pin, but he hasn't reached the dance stage yet. Baozi herself said that she's close to the professional 9th pin, but she's the kind of person who's proud and modest in front of others. I reckon that she's already at the amateur 9th pin. Wang Dali is about the same as her. Jin Lu and Mu Jinyan are a little weaker, but they're still considered strong amateur first pin fighters. Let's see what kind of new students come this time, and whether anyone can comprehend withdraw and step into the dance stage in the next year. Kai Zongming said as he recalled. Lu Qing was stunned. He didn't expect little Ming to have such a serious and attentive side. He was very suitable to be the president of the martial arts club. Apart from senior brother Li Mao, if anyone can reach the dance stage in the next year, then our martial arts club will have a successor and won't decline all of a sudden. Lu Qing sighed with emotion. He glanced at Kai Zongming and chuckled. Don't drag everyone down. Damn, I thought you'd say you want me to be the next dance stage fighter in the martial arts club. Kai Zongming scolded, annoyed and amused at the same time. If I can't reach the dance stage in my junior year, then why should I pursue my martial arts dream? I'll just go home and inherit my dad's company. Professional 9th pin fighters could only participate in the preliminaries and belong to the bottom of the martial arts circle. It wasn't as comfortable as being a rich second generation. As for the amateur ranks, they hadn't even entered the real martial arts circle yet. Really? Lu Qing asked with a smile. Really? Little Ming was at a loss for words. He gulped down a mouthful of ice water and sighed. I can give it a try in my senior year. If I can't reach the dance stage before the age of 25, then it'll be really boring. Why are you getting further and further away from the topic? Lu Qing teased. Don't you have confidence in yourself? I'm just assuming the worst-case scenario. Kai Zongming snorted. Although I'm not as abnormal as you, I'm still one of the top 3 people in the martial arts club for many years. Me Lin Ke ko all of us improve faster than you. Lu Qing exposed talker's *T. Don't you understand human language? I mean, excluding abnormal people like you, I'm one of the top 3. You're alone. Kai Zongming was so angry that he laughed. While talking and laughing, they finished dinner and headed to the martial arts club. Half of it was for digestion, and half of it was a return in a sense. Songqing University's martial arts gym was brightly lit. Many students came to work out and train. Lu Qing looked around and felt very gratified. After 2 years, the atmosphere here was getting better and better. At this moment, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. Qiu Zhigao, old Qiu, was wiping his sweat as he entered the strength training gym. Old Qiu came here a few days early. He practiced in the morning, at night, and during the day, he studied by himself. I'm embarrassed to be lazy. Kai Zoming followed Lu Cheng's gaze. If he was like this in his first year, with his strong body, who would believe that he's not at least an amateur of third pin? Embarrassed to be lazy? Then who was the one who was multitasking? Lu Qing smiled and shook his head. He sighed and said, Old Qiu didn't make the wrong choice. At least his grades are much better than ours. If he can improve his martial arts this year, it will be relatively easy for him to find a job in his 4th year, and the salary will be good too. His family is not very rich, so he can only make the most practical choice. Not everyone can talk about dreams. Are you mocking me? Kai Zoming said self-deprecatingly. Then he changed the topic to other roommates. Model worker is very similar to you. Besides accompanying his girlfriend, all he does is study programming. I heard from Chang that he's pretty good. How about Chang himself? Lu Qing asked with interest. His grades have always been in the top few in our specialization. The counselor hinted to him that if he kept this up for another year, he would probably be admitted to the postgraduate school. Beast failed 2 subjects and passed the retest after paying the tuition fee. But he didn't care. His family is not short of money. Old Mao and his girlfriend both planned to take the postgraduate school entrance exam. Godman failed a few more subjects and was scolded by the counselor. He said that if he continued like this, he would be expelled. Kai Zoming said one by one. Godman was Tang Wen, a serious game enthusiast who could really forget the time of the exam. Lu Qing sighed when he heard this. He was busy with dating and practicing martial arts. He went to bed early and woke up early, so he didn't have much interaction with his roommates. Now that he heard Little Ming's words, he realized that the past 2 years had left traces on everyone. He was about to say something when he suddenly saw a boy walking towards him. The boy was about 1.8 meters tall, with a handsome face and a strong body. His qi and blood were so vigorous that it almost materialized. At least strong 9. Lu Qing whispered. This should be the new first-year student. In other years, except for the martial arts club, there was no such awesome existence. And how could he not know the members of the martial arts club? The boy ran towards him with small steps and shouted with a bright smile. Senior Lu, hello, I'm Deng Yang, a disciple of Shizhou Island. I entered Songqing University this year and just turned 18. At this point, he paused for a moment and added excitedly, You're my idol. This guy is really friendly. Lu Qing couldn't help but criticize him in his heart. 18 years old, professional 9th pin, vigorous qi and blood, and a direct disciple of a big sect. This is not much different from Fang Zhirong and the others. Lu Qing smiled and said, We were just talking about whether there would be any geniuses coming to Songqing University Martial Arts Club this year. Now I'm relieved. We'll recruit after the military training, but you can come with us tomorrow for special training. We'll help you apply for no military training. Okay. Deng Yang replied excitedly and then said firmly, Senior Lu, there are no geniuses in front of you. Not bad, he's good with words. He's a good seedling. Lu Qing almost laughed. After a few more words of greeting, Deng Yang waved goodbye and went back to training. Kai Zoming was relieved and said, Seems like he's easy to get along with. What are you worried about? If there really is a thorn, I can handle it with one hand. Lu Qing sensed Little Ming's worry. But you go to America once a month, and each trip takes 15 days. If we really meet a strong freshman with bad character, we'll be in a difficult position. Kai Zoming looked at Lu Qing with disdain. We can't beat them, and we can't control them. What else can we do? Gang fight. It's not like Peng Liyun and Run Li, who are in dance stage, will come. Why don't you wait for me to come back and deal with them? Lu Qing didn't think it was a big deal. Good martial arts are so amazing. Why do I feel like I've been bullied and called for help? Kai Zoming laughed at himself. If you really want to call me your parent, I don't mind. Lu Qing deliberately dragged the last word. Get lost. Little Ming said concisely. In the dormitory of the Academy of Arts, Heezy pushed open the door of the small dormitory. She looked around and asked, Jinjin, where's Xiaoling? Mu Jinyan looked away from the computer screensaver and pointed outside. She went to the balcony to answer a call. Well, I have something to ask her. Heezy explained casually and went out again. She waited outside the glass door of the balcony. She waited for 2 minutes but didn't hear any voice outside. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned the doorknob and entered the balcony. Looking out, she found Yan Xiaoling squatting in the corner, biting her lips with red eyes. What's wrong? Heezy asked with concern. Nothing. Something happened at home. Yan Xiaoling stood up hurriedly and wiped her face, revealing her signature silly smile. You came to the balcony to make a call too? What a coincidence. No, I just came to ask you one thing. Are you going to participate in this semester's special training? Heezy returned to the topic. Special training? What does this mean? It means I'll have to say goodbye to lazing around in bed, and I'll have very little time to watch TV, QQ, or play games. Yan Xiaoling hesitated. Didn't you say you wanted to participate in the special training last semester? You said you had perseverance and willpower. You even downloaded a training app to supervise yourself. Do you want to prove it to me? Heezy mocked deliberately. And the result? I persisted for 7 days. Yan Xiaoling answered evasively. Then she said confidently, you know me. I'm always short-tempered. My interest will be gone soon. You're quite proud. Heezy was speechless. The next morning after the training, Lu Qing felt the complete transformation of his body. He took out his phone and sent a message to Yan Zheka. Coach Lu is coming online. Chapter 491. September 1st was Monday. In the martial arts arena of Songqing University, the members of the special training team gathered again after 2.5 months. Since they had just won the championship of the National University Martial Arts Competition and had improved a lot during the summer vacation, everyone was full of smiles and high spirits. Box, your face seems to have gotten rounder. The carefree Wang Dali glanced at him casually and greeted a familiar teammate. This semester, he had shaved his hair until only a thin layer was left. Coupled with his naturally fierce facial features, at first glance, he looked like a person who had just been released from prison. Heezy showed him what it meant to kill with her eyes. She made a disdainful gesture and said, So what if my face is round? Did I eat your food or wear your clothes? Believe it or not, I'll draw your little yellow rabbit tonight. Since I was young, I've never lost weight. What can I do? I'm desperate too. Little yellow rabbit. Only then did Wang Dali remember that the round-faced girl in front of him was a famous artist in the Academy of Arts. Her use of a hand-drawn tablet was superb. She had once created a collection of pictures called Hot-Blooded Martial Arts Club, which was very popular on the internet. Of course, whether or not she had actually drawn a little yellow rabbit in private was a matter of opinion. Just as Wang Dali was thinking about whether to be stubborn or beg for mercy, Kai Zongming, who was wearing a white martial arts suit with black edges, came out of the locker room. He looked around and said with a smile, We have 2 tables of mahjong. There were only Sister 1 and senior brother Li Mao left in the senior year, and there were only him and Cheng in the junior year. There were 4 sophomores, Heezy, Wang Dali, Jin Lu, and Mu Jinyan. Including the new student Deng Yang, there were a total of 9 special training members. However, Cheng was a part-time coach and had to fly around, so he was not included. After the recruitment, there should be 20 of us, right? Li Mao looked forward to the future. There were many freshmen who were willing to try the special training, but they usually couldn't last long. Those who could come once or twice a week for martial arts lessons were overcrowded. So, President, you have to cherish us. Organize more activities to improve everyone's cohesion and develop a sense of community. Heezy suddenly suggested with a serious expression. Then, she added with a bright smile. For example, we can hold a do-diju competition or a werewolf-killing game. After getting along with her for almost a year, Kai Zongming knew that although the round-faced girl in front of him looked cold and elegant, She was actually a chatterbox once they got familiar with each other. Thus he didn't mind and teased her. Aren't you and Yan Xiaoling known as the dumb duo? Can you even play werewolf? Meow meow meow. Since when did we have this nickname? It must be because he often stayed with Xiaoling and was dragged down by her. Heezy pointed at herself and said, President, you have to live up to your conscience when you speak. I look smart. How do I look like Xiaoling? I've even learned how to play werewolf kill. What insights? Kai Zongming asked casually. Heezy smiled and glanced at the next door. She replied resolutely. Kill Dali first if you can't solve the problem. What did I do to provoke you? Wang Dali was implicated, which made Mu Jinyan, Jin Lu, and the others burst into laughter. Deng Yang arrived amidst the joyous atmosphere. Everyone was amazed by his vigorous qi and blood. After Kai Zongming's introduction, they were even more confident about the future of the martial arts club. They were no longer worried about the possibility of a break in the club. At 7:56, Lu Qing stepped into the martial arts arena and walked to Heezy and the others. He smiled and introduced himself. From today onwards, I'm your coach Lu. Ah, what? What? Surprised voices sounded one after another. Mu Jinyan and Wang Dali looked at each other with a blank face. But don't worry, I'll be a part-time coach this year. I believe I still have the ability to guide you. The school will also send a former martial artist to be a teacher, but he'll mainly be the team leader. Sister One, you're in your 4th year and should be busy looking for a job. There are some things you don't need to do by yourself. Find a few helpers and train them. Lu Qing said slowly, neither too fast nor too slow, gradually calming everyone's hearts. Although there was no physical invulnerability Mighty One as a coach, it was the same as having a new inhuman heavenly son. Anyway, most of the time there was no difference between Coach Shi and not existing. At this moment, they only felt that Lu Qing was the pillar of the martial arts club. As long as he was still here, the martial arts club would not collapse. Okay, I'll ask Xiaoling if she has time to do more things. Li Xiaowen nodded with a smile. Besides being lazy and fussy, Xiaoling doesn't have any other shortcomings. Heezy complained in a low voice. Lu Qing smiled and looked around at the crowd. While choosing his words, he opened his mouth and said, You didn't waste this summer vacation. Let's set a small goal for this year, and strive to have a new dance stage fighter among you. Since it concerned themselves and they were all young and energetic, everyone was complacent. They talked about the future, and all kinds of information about the threshold of dance stage. According to Coach Shi, only those who could perform force concentration could be considered to have entered the martial arts world. No matter where they went, they would have a good life. Lu Qing listened with a smile. When they were almost done with their discussion, he cleared his throat and said, Let me tell you about my experience when I broke through to dance stage. As soon as he said that, everyone held their breaths and went completely silent. They looked at Coach Lu with eager eyes. Although there were many dance stage experts sharing their experiences on the internet, no one could be sure that the person on the other side of the computer was a cat or a dog. How could it compare to a live high-ranked dance stage expert explaining it personally? Lu Qing pondered for a few seconds and said in a mellow voice, Back then my master only gave me 10 words. Human body Big Dan round and bright. Human body Big Dan refers to the integration of all the forces in your body into one, forming a whole. When you practice, you can't leave any blind spots. You can't stop practicing just because you don't need it. Round and bright means that your force, qi, blood, and spirit are smooth and transparent. This requires everyone to polish it bit by bit and get rid of the impurities in all aspects. You can't be too fast or too anxious. What I just said is all about polishing. The most important thing is the word bright. This refers to the state of the soul, which is also the will. I remember that an ancient person once described it like this. My heart is bright, what else can I say? The so-called will is why you practice martial arts and how much you are willing to pay for it. This is not something that can be solved by shouting a few slogans or doing something stupid out of excitement. You have to constantly reflect on yourself, explore yourself, and truly find the strength that moves you. Then, you have to put it into practice again and again to polish it again, and again so that the will can truly condense and take shape. Maybe everyone thinks that this is very simple. Then let me give you a bad example. Everyone has dreams, but how many people can really practice and fight for it? And how many people can persevere and not be defeated by setbacks and difficulties when they start practicing and fighting? This kind of saying is more like chicken soup without considering other practical factors. You just have to understand the spirit. Based on his own experience, Lu Qing talked about how he searched for his inner strength and condensed his martial arts will in a more down-to-earth manner. He Zi, Deng Yang, and the others seemed to be deep in thought as they listened, not fully understanding. Coach Lu's words are all solid. This kind of discovery is almost impossible. You might need to do something to find it. There is a reason why the monks of Shengxiang's Theravada practice asceticism. Of course, it is not to learn how to beg, how to skip lunch, or how to torture yourself. Instead, it is to think about what is the most suitable method for you. Lu Qing looked calm and had the bearing of a master, but in reality, he was sweating profusely. Being a master and a coach is not an easy thing to do. Clearly, he had already grasped the knowledge, but to express it clearly and completely was not easy at all. The description just now was at most 50% to 60% of what you really mean. Alright, that's all for today. Take your time to digest it. Don't be anxious. Look for me if you have any questions. Lu Qing secretly exhaled. Now let's move on to the pole standing practice. Yes, Coach Lu. Everyone replied in unison. After that, they looked at each other and smiled. The feeling of being united and striving for good results in the nationals was back. When they returned to the dormitory, Zi saw Yan Xiaoling had just climbed out of bed. She pretended to mention casually, "Coach Shi has returned to the Ice God sect. We are Coach Lu now." Coach Lu. Yan Xiaoling had one foot on a slipper, and the other on the ladder. Yes, Lu Qing. Zi turned around and smiled like a flower. I want to go for special training. Yan Xiaoling was excited. I want to receive personal guidance from Lu Qing. 3 minutes of enthusiasm. Zi coldly threw back the words. Yan Xiaoling was speechless. She slapped her thigh and said, "Oh my, I forgot I haven't registered yet. When are you recruiting special training members?" After the first-year military training, Zi changed the topic. "Xiaoling, what's wrong with you these 2 days? You don't seem to be in a good mood." She was on the verge of crying when she was on the phone with her family. Yan Xiaoling's lips quivered a few times before she sighed and said, "It's nothing much. Anyway, it's like going home. It's like living under someone else's roof. I want to earn money as soon as possible and have a home of my own." Zi didn't ask any more questions. She squeezed out a smile and said, "I thought you were being bullied. If you really need help in the future, just tell me. I'll fly to Yanling to help you. With one arrow, thousands of troops will come to my aid." She didn't expect the usually happy Xiaoling to have such experiences in sadness. "Box, you are the best boyfriend." Yan Xiaoling regained her mood and gave him a thumbs up. Zi smiled and nodded. "Well said. I'll make sure you wake up on time and memorize vocabulary and homework every day." Ah. Yan Xiaoling's face was even more bitter than before. Bing. Lu Qing heard a text message. He picked it up and found that the 500,000 yuan prize for the King of Youth League had arrived. He now had a little over 2,450,000 yuan in savings. He didn't have to worry about the cost of being a flying man for a year. By next year, he would have entered the professional martial arts circle and wouldn't have to worry about income. He took a screenshot of his balance and sent it to Yan Zhika. Clenching fist expression. "I'll wait for September 14th. Well, before that, I have to go through the inspection and change my professional 8th pin certificate to professional 5th pin. Chapter 492. September 7th, Sunday morning, Songqing Martial Artist Association's indoor training ground. Can we begin? Lu Qing tightened his sleeves and smiled at the 3 examiners in front of him. He had obtained his professional certification in Songqing, so he could come here to change his certification. However, both the Provincial Martial Artist Association and the capital had specially dispatched personnel to the scene to conduct a joint examination in the name of justice. Sure, let's begin. The leader, the white-haired old man, nodded his head pleasantly, an inhuman below the age of 21, who knew how far he could go in the future. Even though he was a senior high-pin and had a high status in the martial arts world, he didn't want to offend him over such a trivial matter. There was a saying in the martial arts world that one would rather bully an old man than a poor young man. Lu Qing cupped his hands and bowed. He walked to the side of the field and faced a hanging sandbag. He lowered his waist slightly, allowing his qi and blood to flow back to his lower abdomen. He felt empty and vast, but also as though he had shrunk into a ball, round and terrifying. His danqi gushed out. Lu Cheng's muscles swelled and became distinct. Following which, he shook his shoulders and threw out his arms, as though he was going to move forward. During this process, his fist penetrated the air current and burned with a layer of red flames, as though he was wearing a violent glove. Boom. His fist hit the target, but there wasn't a dull thud. Instead, there was a commotion akin to a bomb exploding. The entire sandbag suddenly disintegrated. Every grain of sand seemed to be covered in a circle of red. Following the turbulence of the impact, it shot forward, making whooshing sounds that made one's scalp go numb. When all this was over, a conical fan formed in front of Lu Qing. The range of the sputtering made the examiner's eyelids twitch involuntarily. Emperor Yen Force indeed lived up to its name. To be able to use the real, formed and complete Emperor Yen Force, while using force concentration, it was enough to prove that he had completely transformed and was no longer an ordinary person. Heroes indeed come from the young. The white-haired old man clapped and smiled. There are no more problems on our side. We'll send the signed certificate back to the headquarters in the imperial capital later. Wait for about 10 minutes and go straight to the office to get the certificate. Although the other two examiners were a little annoyed that the white-haired old man had acted arbitrarily and announced the end of the examination without consulting them, they couldn't make a fuss about it because he was a senior and the matter was simple and clear. They could only pinch their noses and say with a smile, "Congratulations, young friend. Songqing hasn't had an inhuman for many years." "Sorry to trouble you, seniors," Lu Qing replied politely. After chatting awkwardly for a few minutes, he said goodbye to the examiner and went to the office to wait. Not long after, he received the certificate of professional fifth pin from the staff. There was a serial number, a name and a red seal. The whole process of getting the certificate didn't take more than 20 minutes. For Lu Qing, who was well known for his strength, it was indeed just a formality. He exhaled, spread out the certificate in his hand, and snapped a picture. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. When he had come to collect his professional 8th pin certification last September, he had never thought that he would be able to enter the high pin next year. He had even planned to participate in 1 or 2 ranking events. Plans can't keep up with changes. Now they can officially call me a high pin of Dan stage. Lu Qing put away the certificate and showed the picture to Yenjika. He flirted with the girl for a while before uploading it to Weibo. Without any words, he clicked publish. The certificate itself contained thousands of words. After scrolling through everyone's congratulations and praises, Lu Qing walked along the corridor toward the entrance of the City Martial Artist Association. He had just taken 2 steps when he suddenly saw a familiar, yet strange figure enter the building. Seeing him, the newcomer was a little surprised. Then he suddenly understood and said with a smile, "You're here for the certificate of professional fifth pin?" "Yes." Lu Qing glanced at him and muttered in his heart, "Who is this guy? He looks quite familiar." The newcomer had a common buzz cut. His facial features were ordinary, but he had a calm temperament. He didn't notice Lu Cheng's doubts and sighed with a smile that didn't haze. "When I lost to you last year, I was quite unwilling to accept it. Who would have thought that in just a year and a half, I would be left far behind by you?" Hearing this, Lu Qing suddenly remembered who he was. He was Peng Qingguang from Mingwei Martial Arts School. He had fought with him in the preliminaries. At that time, he was 24 years old, and had already obtained the professional 9th pin certificate for 3 years. His qi and blood were at the peak of that level. His punches and kicks also had a hint of withdrawing. He was one of the most difficult opponents to deal with outside of the dance stage. This classmate had become famous at a young age. He was a popular martial artist of the body refining stage in Songcheng, and had won the favor of many big martial arts schools and aristocratic families. However, in order to maintain the independence of Mingwei martial arts school left by the old schoolmaster, he would rather practice ordinary martial arts than be annexed or separated. He stubbornly shouldered everything. Because of this, he had been stuck at the threshold of dance stage for a long time. Looking him up and down, Lu Qing showed a sincere smile and saluted Peng Qingguang. Should I congratulate you too? Peng Qingguang's exuberant qi and blood had been completely restrained. As an experienced person, Lu Qing knew very well what this meant. Peng Qingguang accepted the salute calmly and replied with emotion. I just broke through recently. I'm also here to get my certificate. Sai, I can't compare to you. After saying that, he saluted Lu Qing and congratulated him for entering the inhuman stage. Both of them weren't very familiar with each other. After a few words of greeting, they bid each other farewell. Before leaving the door, Lu Qing turned back and saw Peng Qingguang disappearing at the corner of the corridor. He nodded thoughtfully. He looked up Peng Qingguang's information and found that he was still in Mingwei Martial Arts School. By working for the Martial Arts Association, he had exchanged for an average martial arts manual. In order to persevere in his heart, he had endured many years of hardship, facing temptations, setbacks, disappointment, and pain. He had never wavered. Even Lu Qing was ashamed of his willpower. After crossing the threshold of dance stage, Peng Qingguang would no longer have any obstacles before the inhuman stage. As for the future, Lu Qing didn't have enough foresight to see so far ahead. After leaving the small building where the association was located, Lu Qing went to the martial arts arena nearby. He took out his phone and opened the app to book a ride. At this moment he suddenly felt thirsty. Hence he turned to a nearby supermarket. As he picked out some energy drinks, he started to daydream about his trip to America next week. His longing for Yenjika over the past month flooded his mind bit by bit, igniting a sense of disappointment and frustration. Full of expectation, he imagined the scene when he met Yenjika again. Subconsciously, he began to consider what kind of expression and words he should use to communicate with the girl. Should he indulge his emotions and give her the warmest and most emotional hug? Or should he show his feelings and let her get used to it gradually? As he thought about it, Lu Qing had already filmed many episodes of TV series in his mind. They were all stories of romantic interactions between the two of them. Of course, as an adult man and a married man, it was inevitable that he would recall and look forward to some things that were not suitable for children. He stopped this trend in time and took the iced energy drink to the payment area. Suddenly, Lu Qing stopped in his tracks. Because of his wild thoughts, he remembered something that he had to pay attention to. I'm already at the inhuman stage. According to Ku's grandpa, there's a small chance that I'll make Ku pregnant. I can't be as unscrupulous as before. I have to take safety precautions. Damn it, I haven't bought that thing yet. Should I go to the forum and ask about it? The title would be, How Do I Pretend to Buy Condoms Regularly When Buying Condoms for the First Time? Just thinking about it made him feel embarrassed. Lu Qing put down the energy drink and took out his phone. He flipped through page after page and already had a plan in mind. According to others, there were usually condoms in the checkout area of the supermarket. When paying the bill, he just had to point at it, and the cashier would understand what he meant. There was no need for too much communication during the whole process. Cough. Lu Qing put on his black-rimmed glasses. Thickening his skin, he took the iced drink and queued behind the checkout line. After 2 or 3 minutes, it was finally his turn. He glanced around sharply, trying to determine his target quickly. Damn it! Why are there only chewing gum, lollipops, and batteries? Where's that thing we agreed on? Lu Qing was dumbfounded. You want this? The cashier picked up a lollipop and asked. Lu Qing didn't know how to explain. He nodded dumbly, took out his change, and took the iced drink and lollipop. When he was out of the supermarket, he came back to his senses and took a sip of the iced drink. What the hell was I doing just now? After finishing the lollipop, he stubbornly found another supermarket. He wasn't in a hurry to act. First, he did a thorough investigation and locked on to the location of his target. Yes, they have their own shelves. While there was no one around, Lu Qing took a quick glance and found that there were several brands, each with different models. He didn't have time to search for which brand was better. He took a box of each model and activated the ice mirror. He calmed his emotions and went to the checkout line calmly, ignoring the occasional glances. After a while, he came to the front of the cashier. The cashier took a look at the dazzling array of boxes and blurted out in surprise. "You want all of them?" "Yes." Lu Cheng's answer was concise and to the point. The ice mirror was almost broken. The cashier looked at him strangely and didn't say anything else. She quickly went through the process. After paying, Lu Cheng carried the bag and walked out of the supermarket unhurriedly. He felt relaxed as he walked to the roadside. He felt like he had passed a difficult obstacle. When he returned to the dormitory, he saw that Zhao Chang and the others weren't there. Lu Cheng couldn't help but flip through the spoils of war. As he looked, another doubt surfaced in his mind. How do I use this thing? If I embarrass myself at the crucial moment, won't Ke laugh at me for the rest of my life? Also, there are different models and varieties here. After thinking seriously for a while, he opened the packaging and began reading the instructions. He took a few and went to the bathroom. After a while, Lu Cheng, who had solved all his problems, came out in a relaxed and happy mood. He happened to see Kai Zongming opening the door to the small dormitory. "Hey Cheng, you look like you're in love. Are you thinking about going to America next week?" Little Ming teased him. Lu Cheng was surprised and asked back, "You can tell." "Of course. Don't you know who I am?" Kai Zongming replied proudly. "You're going to America next week. It would be strange if you weren't in love these few days." "I can't tell, but I can deduce." Lu Cheng was stunned. He was once again impressed by the Casanova's strength in this aspect. After that, a week finally passed in his mind. The date of September 14th jumped into his eyes. Chapter 493. On the 14th of September, after his morning exercise and shower, Lu Cheng carefully checked the things in his backpack to make sure he had everything he needed. Then he couldn't wait to leave the campus and take a taxi to the airport. After an hour of waiting, he finally boarded the flight to Connecticut, America. His emotions were surging as he went through a series of procedures such as picking up his ticket, border inspection, and security check. At 11:55 a.m. on the 14th of the Beijing time and 10:55 p.m. on the 13th of the Connecticut summertime, Yan Zhike, who was chatting with Lu Cheng intermittently, received the latest message from him. "Turn off your phone. Take off now." Yan Zhike's eyes lit up instantly. She picked up her phone and typed quickly. She typed 2 lines of words, but as she wrote, she felt that the words were not enough or too straightforward to express her thoughts accurately. So she deleted all the words and only replied with a nodding like a chicken pecking rice emoji. "Okay." She clicked send and put away her phone. While she was working on the report, she pressed the button several times to see if there were any new messages from Lu Cheng. After waiting for a while, there was no reply. She checked the website again and confirmed that the flight had taken off successfully. She endured the throbbing in her heart and finished all the reports and leftover homework for this week. She didn't have to do anything else on the 14th, which was Sunday. Yan Zhike twisted her body and stretched herself. She took off the rubber band and let her hair fall down smoothly. Her hair was shining with dark light. Then, she took her pajamas and went into the bathroom. She washed her hair seriously until her face was rosy and moist. "I think I value you enough." Yan Zhike wrapped her wet hair with a dry towel and wiped the fog on the mirror. She looked at herself, gently biting her lips, and laughed in a low voice. Someone always said that he valued girls more than him. She thought for a moment, then applied body lotion and a facial mask. When her hair was completely dried, she suddenly remembered something. Her cheeks flushed even more as she took out another bottle of cream. Her eyes rippled as she applied the cream on her thighs. She pushed it down past her knees to her ankles and stopped at the tips of her feet. "Humph." Yan Zhike snorted inexplicably. On the flight, Lu Cheng, who had always been thrifty, booked the economy class. Even so, the round trip cost him nearly 20,000 yuan. Because of this, his savings were only a little more than 2,450,000 yuan. Phew, this really isn't a long-distance relationship that most people can afford. Lu Qing looked at the plane ticket and came to a similar realization. Wasn't the purpose of strengthening oneself and becoming better so that one could withstand these tests? The internet wasn't available on the plane, but Lu Qing didn't feel bored. Sometimes he would meditate, cultivating the nuances and consolidating his inhuman stage. Other times, he would imagine his meeting with Yan Zheke and their interactions for the next half a month. When his thoughts were at their most scattered, he even sketched out the future, living one life after another with the girl. Of course, not feeling bored didn't mean that he wasn't anxious. He only hated that the flight couldn't arrive immediately, and hated that his ability couldn't be used in this matter. As for the bumpiness of the long-distance flight and the narrowness of the economy class seat, it did not make him feel uncomfortable. There was no sign of back pain. An inhuman is an inhuman. On the way, there were in-flight meals provided. After they were done, the stewardess handed out the entry card and declaration form to each passenger. They could ask for a Chinese template, but they had to fill in the form in English. With Coach Yan's cramming before the exam, Lu Qing finished it easily and clipped it into his passport. They didn't speak for the rest of the journey. The flight began to descend at 4:40 p.m. on the 14th of September in Connecticut. Through the window, Lu Qing could see a magnificent and vast lake, a river flowing through the city, and a cluster of modern high-rise buildings. This was a very important city in America. It had developed industries such as finance, steel, food, and manufacturing. It had a complete logistics system and convenient transportation. Not to mention, Connecticut University, which was located here, was famous in the field of economics. Nearly one-third of the top scholars who had won awards in this field were from this university. It's said that there's a martial arts sect here that's considered outstanding in the whole of America. It's called Jiruga or something. Similar thoughts flashed across his mind, and his thoughts quickly turned back to the upcoming reunion after a long separation. A month or so was more than enough time for a newly married couple. Judging from the posts, even if we had been apart for a long time, we would feel a little distant from each other. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to give Ku a hug straight away. I would have to do it step by step. But if I do that, would Ku feel that I'm too cold and leave a knot in her heart? Sigh, what a dilemma. North of Connecticut in the girls' room, Yan Zheke sat in front of the dressing table, finishing the last stroke of the makeup that she had been busy with for a long time. She pursed her pink lips and looked at herself in the mirror. At times, she felt that she was so beautiful that Chung, that fool, would never be able to take his eyes off her. At other times, she felt that she had bags under her eyes because she had been rushing homework and reports for the past few days in order to spare some time. Furthermore, she had put on a whole 4 kilograms because of the reduced training time in the past 2 weeks. Compared to when she was in China, she seemed to be a little lacking. She glanced at the time and stopped hesitating. She stood up and opened the wardrobe. She recalled every time she made Lu Qing stare at her in a daze while she picked out a matching outfit. It was September in Connecticut, and the weather had already turned cold. However, the local climate was changeable and there were often differences in temperature within a day. Hence, there were many signs on the streets that indicated the current time and temperature. Yan Zheke hesitated for a while before choosing a gentlemanly white shirt, a knee-length skirt, a pair of skin-colored stockings, and a pair of youthful tennis shoes. She examined herself for a while. While her heart was suddenly pounding, she put on the wedding ring, grabbed her bag, and left the room. She called her full-time bodyguard Auntie Du, and asked her to drive her to the airport. At 5:15 p.m., the slightly delayed flight landed at the busy Orion airport. Lu Qing carried his luggage and held his passport. While walking with the crowd, he sent Yan Zheke a message saying that he had landed smoothly. As he had been practicing speaking and listening with teacher Yan, he was barely able to communicate with the staff. It didn't take him much effort to reach the customs counter. Of course, there was no lack of queues. After receiving the passport, entry card, and declaration form, the staff began to examine them carefully. At this moment, in a secret office in the airport, The local person in charge of Homeland Security saw that the word danger had been marked in red on the computer screen. Danger level. The pot-bellied man made a call and called in a Caucasian man in his late 20s. He pointed at the computer and said in a deep voice, "Smith, keep a lookout until he leaves." The brown-haired, Sonny Smith lowered his head and looked at the screen. Danger level? So young? The black-haired man from China on the screen was clearly not older than 25. No, according to the information, he was only 20. Is he a monster? Don't ask why. Just do your job and I'll get Rainey to organize the information for you. I'll also give you sea-level access to Skynet. The head of the department wiped his sparse hair. Yes, sir. Smith turned around and raised his right hand. A thin thread that was hard to see flew out and wrapped around the door handle, pulling it open. He raised his left hand and another thread flew out. Smith pulled and flicked the thread and was out of the office. Close the door. The head of the department growled and muttered. Don't think you're Spider-Man just because you evolved this ability. That's a virtual character. All right, sir. You can go now. After a total of 10 minutes, the customs staff returned the passport and the half-torn entry card to Lu Cheng. Phew. Lu Cheng, who was worried that he would be deported as a terrorist, heaved a sigh of relief. He quickened his pace and rushed to the security check. After another round of queuing, he strode to the arrival hall. As he walked, he sent a message to Yenjika. Where are you? I'm almost out. International traffic packages are so good. Yenjika observed her surroundings and declined his attempt to strike up a conversation. Her heart raced as she lowered her head and replied, just opposite the exit. Look ahead. Beep. The message came in. Lu Cheng glanced at it and almost burst out laughing. Ko was also very excited. He had described it in such a general manner, without any iconic things. Just as he was about to ask another question, he had already walked out. He subconsciously raised his head and looked as far as his eyes could see. He saw that elegant and graceful figure standing quietly in the waning light. There was no landmark. She was the landmark. She bloomed silently among the people and made the surroundings beautiful. Bang, bang, bang. Lu Cheng's heartbeat quickened. He kept telling himself to be patient and to do it step by step so as not to frighten Ko. However, his footsteps were getting faster and faster. Yenjika, on the other hand, wanted to be reserved. But when she saw the familiar figure, she couldn't help but move her feet to welcome him. After a few steps, they were so close that they could hear each other's breathing. Their faces were so clear. They were no longer separated by screens, phones, computers, or network cables. Her face was as beautiful as a flower. Her smile was as light as usual. Lu Cheng's mind buzzed. He forgot everything else and reached out to hold Yenjika tightly in his arms. Yenjika was stunned at first. Then she softened. Feeling the warmth in her memory and smelling the familiar scent, she felt the worry, fear, nervousness, and uneasiness in her heart disappear one by one. The unfamiliarity of fear disappeared before it even appeared. There were a few other couples hugging like this in the arrival hall of Orion. They weren't the only ones. How enviable. Smith chewed his gum and stared at the surveillance screen. He almost whistled. Chapter 494. With her fragrance lingering in his nose and the warmth of her body in his arms, Lu Cheng felt his heart settle down. The emptiness in his heart was finally filled. Neither of them spoke as they immersed themselves in the embrace of each other. However, the conservative nature in their bones prevented them from kissing passionately, like the other couples in the arrival hall. After a long while, Yenjika gently pushed Lu Cheng away. She brushed her slightly messy hair and said with a teary face, "Let's go out. Aunt Du is waiting for us. Let's talk when we get home." "Yes, home. Okay." Lu Cheng held her delicate hand as if he was familiar with it. It was as if they had never been apart for more than a month. Their fingers were intertwined, and they held each other tightly. With a smile that was difficult to fade away, the couple talked about their feelings just now as they slowly walked out. They walked out of the arrival hall and into the parking lot. Duyen was standing beside the car. Seeing them come over, she smiled and waved. "Aunt Du, this is Lu Cheng." Yenjika pointed at her husband, and said with a faint smile, "Hello." Aunt Du. Luqing immediately smiled and greeted her. Their hands were intertwined, with no intention of letting go. Good. Ke has been watching your matches recently. I also took a few glances. Du Yan smiled and shook her head. If my son was half as capable as you, I would wake up laughing in my sleep. She glanced at the posture of the couple from the corner of her eyes and was speechless. Youngsters nowadays are so much more open than us. However, they have already received Elder G's recognition and met his parents. They are just waiting to graduate and get married. It's normal for them to be closer. Unlike the Americans, it's scary. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the couple sat in the back. Due to the presence of outsiders, they did not talk about reuniting after a long time. They only talked about Lu Cheng's feelings on the long-distance international flight, and the interesting things Yenjika had seen and heard in school. The car sped all the way into the North District of Connecticut. This was a gathering place for the local wealthy. Police were often seen patrolling the area, and it was rare to see outsiders. After passing by patches of grass, they successfully arrived at Yenjika's rented home. Looking at the sky, Dian smiled and said, "You guys get off first. I'll go to the garage and prepare dinner. The food on the plane is not good and it's not enough." Yeah. Lu Cheng expressed his agreement. Whether it was delicious or not was up to the individual, but the portion was too little for him at the moment. Every time, he had to be thick-skinned and ask the stewardess for 2 more portions. Even so, he was only 30% full. Previously, all he could think about was Ku, so he didn't feel hungry at all. But now he could hear his stomach rumbling. Yenjika also sensed it. She held back her laughter and pulled Lu Qing out of the car. Then they walked quickly to the gate. "Since you're so delicious, I'll give you my share too." Her eyes sparkled as she pursed her lips and said, "What about you?" Lu Qing wasn't willing to let his little fairy go hungry. Yenjika pouted slightly, wrinkled her nose, and replied with grief and indignation, "I've gained 4 pounds. You still dare to eat it?" "No, I didn't feel it when I carried you just now. Besides, with your strength, this weight is a lot lighter." Lu Qing comforted Kuku. "At least you're tactful. If you dare to say that I'm really fat, humph." Yenjika's eyes twinkled. She pursed her lips and said, "It's true. It was okay when we were in the language short-term class. But after the official start of the semester, we had to connect with the curriculum in our country. The schedule was tight. Also, the professors here love to give homework. Sometimes, we have to work in groups. There's a girl in our group who's dragging us down, so we're so busy every day. We sleep very late and don't have much time to train in the morning. That's why our weight keeps increasing." She swung her arm up to represent her weight. "Luckily, I don't think you're heavy anymore." Lu Qing emphasized again. He wouldn't say that he always thought that Kuku was on the thin side. A little meat would be better. "I'm a good youth who grew up with all the tricks of Coach Yen. How could I make a mistake on such a simple matter?" While talking, he followed Yenjika into the house. It was a 2-story building. The exterior didn't reveal anything, but the interior was luxuriously decorated. "You'll stay in my mom's room. It's on the 2nd floor like mine. Aunt Du will stay downstairs." Yenjika explained to Lu Qing the arrangements for this period of time. "Okay." Lu Qing nodded without a care. "It doesn't matter where I live. I'll move to your place anyway. Aunt Du is on the 1st floor. She won't be disturbed." Yenjika seemed to have sensed his thoughts. She glanced at him coquettishly. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about you." Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. He instantly found the ability to say sweet nothings in front of her. "Pooh, you're obviously thinking about bad things." Yenjika spat and turned her head to the side. She was about to say something when Duyen walked in. She had to stop herself and talk about the local customs of Connecticut with Lu Qing. As they talked and laughed, a sumptuous dinner was placed on the table because the ingredients had already been prepared. Yenjika picked up a few chopsticks and finished half a bowl of rice. Then she put down the cutlery and looked at her silly Qing stuffing himself with one hand. "You're really not eating?" Lu Qing asked again with concern. "No, I'm on a diet." After this period of time, when I get used to the curriculum and have time to train, I'll go back to my normal diet. Yenjika answered seriously and resolutely. Okay. Why do I feel like you're more tired studying abroad than at home? Lu Qing sighed. Yenjika puffed up her cheeks and said, if I really want to learn well here, there will be a lot of homework and reports. It's not like what some people at home think, where they only have fun. Also, I've chosen more courses. In order to finish school early, graduate early, and go back early to see you. Then you have to train hard. A good body will give you a good spirit. Lu Qing reminded her. At this time, Duyan brought out 2 more dishes. One was mashed potatoes in the middle, surrounded by roasted potato skin. The other was tomato oxtail soup. The red color was very attractive. Yenjika sniffed and looked straight at it. Then she picked up a piece of roasted potato skin and said, Qing, Aunt Du's dish is really delicious. Really? Lu Qing looked at her and waited for her to pick up food for him. However, Yenjika put the potato skin into her mouth. Her neat and clean teeth nibbled on half of it, and then she chewed and swallowed with satisfaction. Didn't you say you don't want to eat? Lu Qing said, amused. Yenjika replied with a and raised her chin, replying righteously and sternly, I'm trying to see if it's good or not. Well, not bad. Aunt Du didn't fail. You can eat now. Lu Qing tried to hold back his laughter. He cleared his throat and said, then why don't you try the other dishes for me? Yenjika bit her lips and looked like she was in a dilemma. Finally, she looked up and nodded slightly. Since you're so insistent. At this point, she couldn't pretend anymore. She laughed first. Her voice was clear, and the branches swayed. Then she said bitterly, you have to train with me tomorrow morning. Do you know that? Before Lu Qing could answer, she had already picked up a piece of stewed beef and stuffed it into her mouth impatiently. Don't worry. Lu Qing looked at his wife gently with a smile. After eating and drinking, they sat on the sofa and watched Duyan tidy up the table. After you digest, I'll bake you cakes and biscuits. Sitting next to Lu Qing, Yenjika was eager to show off her achievements during this period. I'm looking forward to it. Lu Qing was also interested. Then I'll prepare the ingredients first. Yenjika stood up, put on her slippers, and walked to the kitchen. She was like a diligent little bee, going in and out, back and forth. It wasn't until now that Lu Qing had recovered from some kind of excitement and noticed what his little fairy was wearing. It wasn't like before when he only had eyes for her, only her frown and smile. Other than that, he didn't pay attention to anything else. She's so pretty. His gaze followed the girl's figure from side to side. When Yenjika was almost done and came back, he remembered something. He pointed at the stairs with his chin and laughed in a low voice. Let's go to your room first. I'll give you the gift. Okay. Yenjika's eyes sparkled, but she pretended to be reserved. She led Lu Qing to the second floor at a steady pace. On the second floor, Lu Qing entered the girl's room. He put down his backpack, opened the bag, pulled down the zipper, and took out a book. Chinese home-cooked food. It's the thought that counts. Seeing the menu and hearing his words, Yenjika burst into laughter. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and watched her husband take out something else. Also, this amulet is made of silver. I bought it in Jingyan Ancient City. Lu Qing introduced the gifts one by one, as though he was talking about his life in the past month. He rambled on and presented his feelings wholeheartedly. It was as though no matter where he went, his heart was always with the girl. Yenjika felt a little tipsy as she watched and listened. Her eyes flickered with starry light. Okay, that's all. Lu Qing stopped. Yenjika raised her head and stared at him. Her eyes seemed to contain thousands of words, making Lu Qing's heart skip a beat. Just as the atmosphere became delicate, the girl saw a few boxes of strange things in Lu Qing's backpack from the corner of her eye. What's that? Yenjika propped herself up and stretched her arm out curiously. Lu Qing looked down and blushed. He wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Yenjika took out the boxes and took a closer look at them. Her pretty face immediately turned red like the red clouds in the sky. She said in a sweet voice, You even bought these things. Qing actually brought a condom over. Ahem, I was just thinking that I'm already at the inhuman stage. Lu Qing pretended to be normal. Yenjika snorted. She had never seen the real thing before, So she held back her shyness and opened the boxes curiously. She was stunned and blurted out, "Why is there one missing?" Chapter 495. Ah. Hearing his little fairy's question, Lu Qing opened his mouth, but found it hard to speak. Seeing him in a daze, Yinjuka blinked innocently and pointed to the upper left corner of the box. "There's a 3 here. Doesn't it mean there are 3 of them? I think there are only 2 inside. I'm too young to understand. Don't lie to me." Lu Cheng's face turned red. He decided to tell the truth. The words on the back of the box clearly indicated that it was a 3-piece package. As long as Ku wasn't blind and had the heart to look at it, she would definitely notice it. If she lied about this kind of thing, wouldn't it arouse suspicion? Wouldn't she be waiting for a domestic violence case? Cough, cough. He coughed again and looked to the side, pretending that he didn't care since he was thick-skinned. "It's 3. I haven't used it before. I was afraid that I might mess it up at a critical moment, so I opened the package and tried it myself." Yinjuka was dumbfounded. Her clear eyes were wide open, like a kitten whose head was stuck. After a few seconds, she realized what was going on. Her body began to tremble like a sieve, and her dimples appeared uncontrollably. It was very difficult for her to hold back her laughter. Chung is really good at preparation. What an experimental spirit. "You're so funny." Yinjuka threw away the box, fell down, and hugged the white bear doll. She laughed so hard that one of her slippers fell off the edge of the bed. "I can't help it. Ha ha." Lu Qing looked helplessly at his wife who was about to roll on the bed with laughter. He sighed softly and rubbed his face. "I was afraid of embarrassing myself at a critical moment and being laughed at by you for the rest of my life. Well, it doesn't seem to make any difference now. Well, it's worth it to make Ko laugh and make her so happy." While thinking, he began to feel that this was quite funny. He looked at Yinjuka with a slight smile, waiting to see how long she could laugh. After looking at her for a few seconds, his gaze was involuntarily attracted to the girl's curved eyebrows, her delicate cheeks that were flushed from smiling, her beautiful pink lips that were pursed, and her fair and slender neck. From top to bottom, from bottom to top, he looked at her again and again. The night outside the window seemed to have gotten darker, and the moon seemed to have gotten brighter. Yinjuka laughed for dozens of seconds and finally calmed down. When she was about to make fun of her Chung, she suddenly found that the surroundings had become unusually quiet. Then she felt the bed sink. She raised her head and turned her face to the side. She saw Lu Chung sitting on the edge of the bed with his back bent. His eyes were deep and dark, as if there was a dark fire burning in them, but they were filled with her figure. When their eyes met, Yinjuka bit her lower lip lightly and withdrew her wanton smile. She slowly closed her eyes, her long and black eyelashes fluttering. Lu Qing supported himself with both hands, bent down and gently kissed the girl's pink lips. With a clang, the inside and outside of the room were cut off. "I finally understand what absence makes the heart grow fonder." Lu Qing thought happily as he pulled the girl to him after finishing his work, and lay down on the bed. "You were so hungry just now," Yinjuka protested in a delicate voice as she playfully traced Lu Cheng's abs. He felt like he would be swallowed whole. "Hee, I was indeed hungry for a long time." Lu Cheng snickered. "I wanted to restrain myself on the first day so that you wouldn't think I was only thinking about that. But when I saw my little fairy, I couldn't help it." After such a communication, the two felt that the last bit of distance between them and the barrier brought by time had completely disappeared. Their hearts were tightly pressed together again, and they couldn't wait to tell each other all their secrets. Yinjuka wanted to laugh and glare at Lu Cheng at the same time. She bit her lip and asked half curiously and half concernedly, "Cheng, I have a question for you. I heard that once a boy starts to think about it, he will always think about it. Have you thought about it in the past month? What if you do? You wouldn't do that, right?" She lowered her eyes and laughed secretly, thinking of how she was tricked by Chung to help him in the past. "It's all right. Previously, I was at a critical moment in the inhuman stage, and had to participate in the King of Youth Pro League. My wife wasn't by my side, so I didn't have the time to think about that. Later on, sometimes it would pass after a while. Sometimes it would be resolved by myself. Didn't I do that in the past? Lu Qing answered frankly and proudly while caressing her sweaty back. I don't even look at other girls. Hearing her husband's words warmed Yan Zhika's heart. She suddenly remembered Yan Xiaoling's complaint. She said that she had finally mustered up the courage to sign up for the special training and accept Coach Lu's guidance. But in the end, her idol only had eyes for his senior and flew straight to America without any hesitation. This disappointed many female students who were interested in participating. Because of this, she decided to go back and sleep in. It was better to watch her idol from afar. What about you? Lu Qing asked casually. Just as he said that, he felt regret and suspected that he would be kicked off the bed. Yan Zhika was feeling sweet inside and wanted to be closer to Silly Chung. After hearing that, her pretty face flushed red. She gave Lu Qing a hard punch and kicked him. She said angrily, "Why would I? I'm very busy. I have to adapt to the curriculum here every day and keep up with my progress. Most of the time, I have to do homework and reports. Also, I don't like to attend classmates' gatherings." The group discussions are all held in the library and then I leave. They all think that I'm not easy to get along with. They think that I'm a nerd, a boring person, very antisocial, introverted, and unsociable. Here they all like the cheerful, lively girls who can sing and dance. Well, actually, it's not so bad. I don't have to worry about how to avoid arousing suspicion. As she spoke, she forgot about the problem and opened up her heart. She told Lu Qing all the grievances that she had mentioned before, but didn't talk about them in depth. Avoid arousing suspicion. Lu Qing was both happy and sympathetic when he heard this word. He hurriedly asked, "Do they dislike you?" "They do, but it's not that serious. After all, I'm a straight A student and the others in the group rely on me. So they are quite polite. Humph, if they dare to provoke me, I'm a top professional ninth pin expert." Yan Zhika told Lu Qing all her feelings in the past month from beginning to end. Lu Qing comforted her as he listened, or told jokes to dispel the haze. In the end, he clenched his fist and waved it. "If anyone dares to bully my little fairy, I'll make them beg for death. Ice and fire, let's see if they're afraid." Yan Zhika was amused again. After she stopped, she frowned and stared at him. "I was so focused on talking to you that I forgot to take a shower first. I'm sweating so much that it's sticky." As she spoke, she tried to put on her shirt and walked barefoot to the bathroom. "Okay," Lu Qing replied with a smile. "What's so good about you?" Yan Zhika looked up at her husband, annoyed and suspicious. "Taking a shower is good." Lu Qing supported himself with his hands and got off the bed. Then he held his little fairy's back with one hand and her legs with the other, completing a princess carry. "Let's go and take a shower." He laughed and opened the door to the bathroom on the second floor. According to Ke, the soundproofing between the first and second floor was very good. If there wasn't anything strange, Aunt Du wouldn't come up here. Yan Zhika was completely dumbfounded. When she came to her senses, it was already too late. She quickly buried her face in Lu Cheng's chest and beat him fiercely. "You stinky hooligan." The sound lingered in the air, turning into the sound of water. After a while, Lu Cheng came out in a fluster. He rushed into the room, picked up the last box and returned. The night was full of stars and wind. At dawn, Yan Zhika pushed someone away and sat up. Her cheeks were still red as she glared at him. "It's all your fault. The sun is coming out." She bit her lower lip hatefully and said with a stern look, "Use the J formula on me. I still have classes in the morning." Cough. "Actually, we were just chatting. How can you blame me?" Lu Qing laughed secretly. He visualized the ancient word in high spirits and formed the hand seal. He said in a low voice. After using the secret technique, his spirit dropped. He said with a pained heart, "You should sleep on time next time. I always feel that using the J formula to recover is evil. It's okay to use it once or twice, but it's harmful to your body in the long run." "Okay, sleep on time." Yan Zhika chuckled, and then put on a serious expression. She shook her fist and said, "I'll remember what you said." Lu Qing was dumbfounded. After washing up, the two were ready to go out for their morning exercise. When they went downstairs, Yan Zhika glanced at the kitchen and suddenly exclaimed, "What's wrong?" Lu Qing asked in confusion. I said I would bake a cake and biscuits for you yesterday. I even prepared the ingredients. In the end, they didn't come down. Yinjika's face turned red inch by inch. She was so embarrassed that she almost couldn't lift her head. Aunt Du didn't clean up. She must have thought that we would come to make them at night. And now they are still there. Isn't it obvious? Uft. It's fine. I just said I forgot. Lu Qing was thick-skinned and didn't mind. Yinjika rolled her eyes and glared at him. She clenched her teeth and said, It's all your fault. To this, Lu Qing could only reply with a smile. After the morning exercise and breakfast, Aunt Du drove Yinjika to school. Lu Qing followed her to liven up the atmosphere so that the girl wouldn't feel guilty in front of Aunt Du when they arrived at the school gate. Yinjika tied up her hair and put on her huge black-rimmed glasses. I'm going to class. You can walk around by yourself. The people here love to use slang. If you don't understand, you can just ask a few more times. Don't worry. I have professional translation software. I even downloaded the Google 3P set. Lu Qing smiled and waved his phone. At this moment, Du Yen parked the car and accompanied Yinjika into the school. She would wait in a secluded area to prevent school shootings or violent incidents. American schools weren't exactly safe. Lu Qing only retracted his gaze when the girl's figure disappeared. He opened the map and searched for martial arts centers or fighting venues nearby. One of his main goals in coming to America was to experience more martial arts of different styles. After confirming the direction, he followed the map and walked like a backpacker. After a while, he arrived at a 3-story building. There was a signboard here that said China Dragon Punch Dojo. It's really Chinese. Lu Qing stood at the entrance and looked around. He happened to see the receptionist at the front desk. She had long black hair and delicate facial features. Judging from her appearance, she wasn't Japanese. Hello, are you here to learn martial arts? The receptionist noticed him and asked in English with a sweet smile. Chapter 496. Hearing the receptionist's question, Lu Qing's mind spun quickly. He smiled and nodded. I'm thinking about it. Can I go in and take a look? He wasn't proficient enough in speaking and could only express his thoughts in a concise manner. If the so-called dragon fist was unique and different from others, and the martial arts masters were strong, he wouldn't mind paying to spend a few days here. He could also complete a private spar and not ruin the reputation of the martial arts masters. Of course, I'll get someone to lead you in and introduce you. The receptionist replied with a smile, as though she had seen a business deal about to be done. She picked up the phone and spoke a few words. Soon, a skinny young man came out of the martial arts hall and greeted him warmly. Chinese? Yes, Lu Qing answered frankly. The young man in front of him didn't have a lot of qi and blood. He could barely see the muscles on his arms. Just arrived in Connecticut, right? The skinny young man sized Lu Qing up and said with a smile. The weather here is changeable, so you have to be careful. I forgot to mention, I'm Li Zuanping, a student and handyman in the martial arts hall. Let's talk inside. You can take a look around. Sure. Lu Qing followed Li Zuanping into the hall with great interest. He toured the training ground on the first floor and the strength and equipment room on the second floor. He found that the layout here was similar to that in China, except that most of the students were foreigners. Looking at the men and women with white, black, or brown skin practicing the horse stance and punching, it was a fascinating feeling. What do you think? We are a very orthodox martial arts hall from China. The strength of our instructors is also very strong. A few of them have won the Connecticut Unlimited Fighting Championship. Li Zuanping did his best to introduce the place. Have you practiced martial arts before? If you are a beginner, we have corresponding courses and special training plans. Listening to the other party's long-winded speech and glancing at the ordinary punching and kicking practice, Lu Qing restrained his waning interest and replied with a smile. Let me think about it. Do you have any promotional materials? Can you give me a copy to take home for a closer look? Although the instructors here were able to make a sound with their punches and kicks, and from time to time they would be able to break wooden planks and break bricks. The cracking sounds made the foreigners admire them, and they felt that the mysterious Chinese kung fu was indeed powerful. However, to them it was really boring. The so-called dragon fist seemed to be an ordinary kung fu that had been modified to be closer to the local physique. However, there was a technique to rejecting. He couldn't just say that the martial arts hall was full of weaklings, and that he didn't like them. Using think about it was an effective way to get away. Yes, I'll give you a copy later. Let me tell you, our Dragon Punch dojo has 10 years of history, and we have 5 or 6 branches in Connecticut. We're definitely not the kind that scams people's money. Our dojo owner is called Zhu Hong, and he went to Nanyang after he made some achievements in martial arts. He's not very famous in China, so it's normal that you haven't heard of him. 11 years ago, he migrated to Connecticut, and combined the martial arts and fighting techniques of 3 different places. He created the Dragon Punch. Li Zuanping smiled. The competition in the local martial arts field in Connecticut is very intense. The fact that we can survive for 10 years proves many things. It sounds like a legend. Lu Cheng's interest was aroused again. He asked with a smile, "What about Master Zhu now? Maybe the characteristics of Dragon Fist can't be reflected in ordinary teaching practice. I can't be arrogant and blindly deny others. Master Zhu is a very busy person. He only oversees each branch for one day. And the day after tomorrow on Wednesday he will come to our place. At that time, you can come and take a look and see the true Dragon Fist." Li Zuanping warmly invited. "When the time comes, you'll definitely be eager to join us." "All right." Lu Qing smiled and nodded. Accompanied by Li Zuanping, he took the documents and left Dragon Fist Hall. He lowered his head and opened the Google map again to look for other fighting venues. In the outdoor cafe across the street, Smith sipped a bitter liquid. Sometimes he would look at the surveillance footage on the computer screen, and sometimes he would look up at the dangerous backpacker-like figure. Yes, a truly dangerous figure. Smith had read the information provided by Rainey in detail last night, and had an unusually deep understanding of the target he was monitoring. That was a mobile high explosive. Rolling waves of fire, huge explosions, and wandering cold light all appeared in Smith's mind. He couldn't help but let out an "oh" and scold under his breath. Those idiots at the embassy whose brains are full of sh*t. Why did they give this guy a visa? Why didn't the boss just deport him? Knowing that he was just complaining, Smith touched his small earpiece and lowered his voice. He instructed a few members of his team to change their positions to avoid being detected by the target. After doing all this, he raised his head and sipped his coffee while looking at the target in a manner of admiring the scenery. At this moment, Lu Qing looked around blankly and coincidentally made eye contact with him. Smith's body tensed up. He didn't look away in a hurry and pretended that nothing was wrong. He nodded his head in a friendly manner and slowly looked to the side. His reaction was that of any normal American. Suddenly, he realized that Lu Qing had moved. That dangerous figure was walking towards the zebra crossing. Taking advantage of the green light, he crossed the street and seemed to be closing in on him. Damn it! Smith quickly lowered his head and pretended to drink his coffee. He cursed in a panic. He couldn't have discovered something, right? Should I get up immediately and leave the scene or reveal my identity, explain the need to monitor him, and use legal terms to confuse him? While he was hesitating, a figure appeared in his line of sight. Lu Qing stopped right in front of him. With a whoosh, Smith's back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. "Smith, this is what every man who wants to be Spider-Man has to go through. Show me your courage." He muttered, raised his head, and calmly looked at the Chinese young man who was marked with the word dangerous in red. "Sorry, can I bother you? I would like to ask for directions." Lu Qing tried his best to make his smile amiable. "Just now, when our eyes met, I decided to ask this fated person for directions. He looks pretty friendly." Smith almost raised his hand to dig his ears, suspecting that he had heard wrongly. He replied in a daze, "No problem. I'm a martial arts enthusiast. Are there any famous martial arts training grounds around here?" Lu Qing organized his words and asked expectantly. With Google's map, he wasn't afraid of finding his way. However, after searching for a long time, he couldn't find his next destination because of his headache from reading English. He even complained to his wife about it. Smith grinned, unfolded the lines on his forehead, and answered with a dazed smile, Msasi Martial Arts Arena, at the 7th Street. It's one of the important bases of the Jaruga martial arts sect. Base understand? Understood. Thank you. A name flashed across Lu Cheng's mind, and he quickly confirmed the route on the map. He waved his hand, bade farewell to the kind brown-haired man, and walked towards the 7th Street not far away. Smith waved back reflexively. When he was far away, he wiped his forehead. His hands were wet with cold sweat. He's just here to ask for directions? Smith muttered. Why is he looking for a martial arts arena? He said he's a martial arts enthusiast. As he muttered to himself, Smith's expression suddenly changed. He stood up abruptly and knocked over a chair. Through the device, he issued an order to his subordinates. Monitor the Msasi martial arts arena immediately. Mobilize the nets above, snares below. Gather manpower and be on the alert for danger level. A dangerous level martial artist from China heading to the Jaruga sect's martial arts arena was bound to give rise to bad thoughts. After more than 30 minutes, he finally saw the huge signboard of the Msasi martial arts arena. The logo of the Jaruga sect was printed on it. A fist holding a trident. Below the signboard were the words Msasi and Msasi. This is the place. It's much more luxurious than the Dragon Punch Dojo. Lu Cheng pushed open the door and entered happily. The receptionist at the front desk was a blonde, blue-eyed girl in a red dress with an explosive figure. She paused for a moment, then slowed down her pace and asked, "You're here to learn martial arts?" "Yes. Can I take a look before making a decision?" Lu Cheng answered with familiarity. "Of course you can." The blonde girl revealed a smile and reminded him in a friendly manner. Many martial artists have a fiery temper. After you enter, you have to remember a few things. Don't stare at others practicing. If someone provokes you, pretend you didn't see or hear it. As for words of discrimination, please bear with it, okay? Okay. Lu Cheng nodded with a smile. After waiting for 2 minutes, a black youth with pigtails and dressed in a very hip-hop style walked out. When he opened his mouth, Lu Cheng suspected for a moment that he would say something like, "Yo yo yo." "Oh, a shy Asian boy." The black youth laughed. "I'm Brooke." "Hello, Brooke." Lu Cheng didn't introduce himself and followed him into the Msasi martial arts arena. They had just taken a few steps when they were greeted by a huge figure. It was a muscular black man who was obviously more than 2 meters tall. His arms were exaggerated and shiny, comparable to Lu Cheng's thighs. With a mocking smile, he glanced at Lu Cheng's thin and weak arms and flexed his terrifying biceps. "Little boy, martial arts isn't suitable for you." After saying that, the bald giant didn't wait for a reply. He let out a carefree laugh and turned into another room. "Don't mind him. Olsen was just joking. He's actually a very kind and humorous person," Brooke hurriedly explained to Lu Cheng, who was a little stunned. Compared to other martial artists. After watching Lu Cheng and Brooke enter, the blonde girl looked outside with nothing to do. Suddenly, she saw someone jumping between the tall buildings like a spider. Chapter 497. The blonde girl exclaimed in surprise. She hurriedly picked up her phone and tried to take a picture. However, when she aimed the screen at him, the figure leaping like a spider between the skyscrapers was already gone. "I missed a superhero." Retracting her gaze, she expressed her regret on social media. Although everyone knew that superheroes from comics and movies were virtual characters and were exaggerations of reality, there were always fans who had evolved similar abilities to imitate and replicate them. According to incomplete statistics, there were more than 20 Spider-Men who were publicly recognized and recorded by fans in America. Batman and Magneto were also not in the minority. After lamenting, the blonde girl suddenly fell into deep thought. The appearance of superheroes was often accompanied by danger. Was there something scary in the vicinity? For a moment, she was both anxious and curious. In the Msasi martial arts arena, Lu Cheng smiled after hearing Brooke's explanation. Understood. Faced with the ridicule and discrimination of the bald giant, Olsen, if it were him in the past, he would have been exceptionally angry and embarrassed. However, with his current strength and realm, he only found it funny and didn't feel insulted. Fighting isn't suitable for me? This joke is enough to keep me entertained for a week. Brooke nodded in satisfaction and led Lu Qing deeper into the arena. They passed through corridors after corridors, passing by training grounds, and introduced the general knowledge of the Jiruga sect. The most influential martial arts school in the Omega Empire was the Mission School. However, the school with the longest history was the Nature School. They believed that everything had a spirit, and through that, they could gain power and transform themselves. The Jiruga School belonged to a major branch of the Nature School. They placed the spirituality of the human body in a more important position. Similarly, there were also different sects within the Jiruga sect. The Msasi sect focused on martial arts and, besides the spirituality of the human body, still emphasized on communicating with the spirits of all things. The other sect was closer to spirit cultivation and had almost developed into a cult. In order to awaken the spirituality of the human body, some of their rituals could even be classified as a cult. However, these were all Brooke's words. His stand was clear, and some of his words could only be taken as a passing remark. Lu Qing didn't comment on this. Occasionally he would respond with a yes, yes, yes. Most of the time, he was observing the layout, the coaches and the students. Compared to the Dragon Fist Dojo, the Msasi fighting arena occupied a large area. The upper and lower floors were separated into training grounds and rooms. There were bare-handed fights, wrestling practice, weapons training, and even fitness classes for ordinary people. As he turned the corner of a room, he caught a glimpse of something that looked like an aquarium out of the corner of his eye. It was made up of huge glass partitions. Inside, the water rippled gently. The color was dark blue, and light shone in from different places. A bare-chested, muscular white man in leather shorts sank down from above. He held his breath and kicked continuously, breaking the underwater stone pillars into two. It's not bad to be able to do this underwater. Lu Qing didn't look any further. He continued forward, deep in thought. All right, this place is exclusively for fighters. As they walked, Brooke reached out and stopped him. He smiled and said sorry. Lu Qing subconsciously looked over and found the place bathed in sunlight. A breeze blew in through the window. It was so quiet that his mind couldn't help but settle. However, it wasn't as if there was no one there. Vaguely, one could see a white man with bulging muscles. He was holding a large sword and silently practicing slashing. Every slash was shining like a star. Step slash, resplendent, step slash, resplendent. This boring and monotonous scene piqued Lu Qing's interest in the Jiruga sect and the Msasi fighting arena. He turned his head and asked Brooke, "If I want to learn, what choice do I have?" To Lu Qing, he wanted to experience different martial arts styles, but he didn't want to cause any trouble. This was because there was a high possibility that it would result in deportation and visa rejection. He wouldn't be able to fly to America to see his little fairy in the future. To him, that would be putting the cart before the horse. Wasn't the most important thing to come here for a couple's reunion? Furthermore, directly challenging the dojo didn't suit his character. It felt too arrogant, unreasonable, and could easily ruin the reputation of others. Therefore, Lu Qing's plan had always been to pay some money and train with them to broaden his horizons. When the opportunity presented itself, he would spar with the strong and become a good young man with ideals, morals, culture, and discipline. All right, we have fitness, beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes. Which one do you want to enroll in? The latter classes require a corresponding fighting foundation, and they're very expensive. Brooke explained in detail as he led Lu Qing back. What's the level of the advanced class? How much is the tuition fee? Lu Qing asked without hesitation. Brooke was stunned for a moment. Looking at the black-haired man's thin arms and legs, he couldn't help but laugh. You? Advanced? Yes, I used to practice martial arts. Martial arts, understand? Lu Qing waved his fist in a standard motion. Martial arts. Brooke muttered to himself. He was shocked, but his eyes were still filled with disbelief. To him, Chinese martial arts were a mystery. It could allow someone who didn't look strong enough to explode with terrifying strength. But could this Asian boy in front of him be someone who had learned martial arts? Let me think. Hey Joe, wake up. Come here for a moment. You can spar with him. Put on your gloves. Brooke gestured to the half-naked muscular Caucasian man. He was practicing his footwork and punches. Joe Waika had a broad forehead and cold features. He looked shy and introverted, but upon closer inspection, one could see the violent and bloodthirsty desire hidden within him. Brooke, stop joking. Joe Waika glanced at Lu Cheng, then glared at the black youth with braids. He wants to enroll in the advanced classes. Brooke shrugged helplessly. Advanced classes? Joe Waika seemed to have heard something funny. He shrugged his shoulders, laughing nonstop. When he was done, he turned around and put on his gloves. He looked at Lu Cheng and said, "Little boy, I'll let you know what an advanced class is. It's different from drinking milk in your mother's arms." "Don't I need to use gloves?" Lu Cheng asked casually. "No need. Punch me with all your might." Joe Waika's eyes lit up as he answered excitedly. "This is the first time I've heard such a request," Lu Cheng complained. He suddenly bent his legs, twisted his knees, swung his back, and sent a straight punch forward. Despite his complaints, he didn't use his full strength. He didn't even use the explosive power of the dance stage, because it wasn't worth it. Bam! A crisp sound rang in Joe Waika's ears. Seeing his opponent's fist inches away, he hurriedly raised his arms and got into a boxing stance. In his mind, he was already imagining his counterattack. He was going to send this Asian boy crying and running back to his mother with a combination of punches. Bam! His gloves dented. Joe Waika's body swayed. He couldn't help but take a step back. 2 steps, 3 steps. Thump! He couldn't stand properly and fell to the ground. "Is that good enough?" Lu Cheng turned around and smiled at Brooke. "Okay," Brooke replied blankly. "Chinese Kung Fu is amazing. This skinny Asian boy can actually knock Joe Waika down with one punch. He's a rising star in boxing. How much is the tuition fee?" Lu Cheng glanced at Joe Waika from the corner of his eye as he stood up shakily. "It's fine if it's too expensive. I'll think of a way to broaden my horizons. From now until Christmas, $5,000. Brooke waved at the confused Joe Waika, indicating for him to return to the training ground. $5,000. That's a little expensive. Lu Cheng thought for a moment. "Where do I pay?" "Follow me." Brooke was a man who had seen martial artists before. He quickly came back to his senses and led Lu Cheng in a different direction. He casually explained, "Our gym membership fee is $100 per month, not including personal trainers. The beginner class is $500, the intermediate class is $1,000, and the intermediate class is $2,000. Lu Cheng had specially applied for a dual-currency credit card in China for the convenience of seeing his wife. This was the perfect time to put it to use. After swiping the card, they signed an agreement. They agreed that they would be able to attend martial arts classes tomorrow for 4 hours a day. If they did well and performed well, they would be able to become an apprentice of the Msasi Martial Arts Gym. A true martial arts apprentice. During this process, Lu Cheng, who was dizzy from reading the agreement, even took a picture of Yenjika. In the end, both parties were happy. Brooke sent Lu Cheng off with a bright smile and waved goodbye. "See you tomorrow." Lu Cheng smiled and headed back to Connecticut University. At this time, Smith had just finished setting up the surveillance cameras to prevent any unexpected situations. He watched as Lu Cheng left the Msasi Martial Arts Gym. Left, damn it. What is he trying to do? Smith cursed. He used his Skynet access to check the Msasi Martial Arts Gym's internal network and some of the surveillance cameras. He signed up for a martial arts class? At this moment, Smith felt that the world was full of imagination. A dangerous level guy actually signed up for a martial arts class that wasn't even an apprentice. After a few seconds, he came to a realization. He remembered a few cases where Chinese martial artists had challenged the martial arts experts as soon as they entered the country. They had caused a lot of trouble and could only be sent back. This monster is trying to use other methods to achieve his goal. Smith nodded slightly. Should I remind them Msasi Martial Arts Gym? A question popped up in Smith's mind. He quickly found the answer. Why should I? He smiled and drew a cross in front of his chest. Chapter 498. After leaving the Msasi martial arts gym, Lucheng decided to stop looking for similar places since he had already decided to start his classes the next day. Meals had to be eaten one bite at a time, and the martial arts schools had to be experienced one by one. He would be coming here once a month. Wouldn't it be boring if he wolfed down everything in one go in the future? He looked at the time, put his hands in his pockets, and returned to Connecticut University. When he passed by a street with more Chinese people, he happened to see a large supermarket. Lucheng took out his phone, took a picture, and sent it to Yenjika with a smirk. "Do you want me to buy some groceries? I think I ate all your stock last night." After he finished typing, he roughly read it and changed "your home" to "our home," with a smile on his face. Then he clicked send. After a few minutes, Yenjika smiled and said, "Why do I feel like you are a house husband? An inhuman expert as a house husband. This character setting is awesome, I'm giving him a thumbs up." Following that, she added, rolling her eyes, "But I remember that we haven't gone grocery shopping together. Wait for me, I don't have class in the afternoon." "Okay," Lucheng replied with a silly smile. He switched to the map interface and reconfirmed the route. Then he put away his phone and walked forward leisurely. After walking for a few minutes, the wind that passed through the streets suddenly became stronger. The sky suddenly darkened, and the temperature dropped at a speed visible to the naked eye. Walala, as the wind reached its peak, the rain began to fall. Drip, 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 drip. The weather in Connecticut sure is changeable. Lucheng, who didn't bring any rain gear, looked around for shelter. At this moment, he had an absolute reaction and noticed the raindrops falling. He flexed his muscles and moved his shoulders slightly. He immediately flung away the raindrops without staining his clothes. That's interesting." Lucheng's eyes lit up, as though he had found something fun. He quickly focused his mind and began visualizing. He formed an ice mirror in his heart and displayed the minute changes in various parts of his body. Compared to the past, his control after reaching the inhuman stage was so strong that it could be said to be abnormal. He felt as if his brain was like a supercomputer, instantly extracting the information collected from every part of his body and rapidly giving feedback, giving orders to each of them. His tendons bulged slightly and his veins pulled. Lucheng kept flexing his muscles, shaking off the raindrops that fell on his body. From his shoulders to his arms, from his chest to his lower abdomen, from his thighs to his ankles. In the beginning, he was a little flustered. He cared about his brother, but lost his sister-in-law. He could care about his upper body, but he couldn't care about his lower body. He could care about his left, but he couldn't care about his right. As the rain fell, a few wet spots quickly appeared on the surface of his body, especially his head. Unless one was a physical invulnerability expert, one wouldn't dare to cultivate too deeply. Just by pulling on the skin and small muscles, one would definitely be slower by half a beat. Step by step, Lucheng walked leisurely in the rain. He slowly grasped the rhythm, and was no longer in a hurry. Everything was in order. It was as if he was immersed in a symphony, letting every part of his body play the role of different instruments, playing a beautiful melody in an orderly manner, intoxicating his soul. In the RV in the next block, Smith looked at the surveillance screen and shrugged. He said to his subordinate who was drinking coffee next to him in confusion, "Is he a poet? Why is he so happy to be in the rain? I don't understand. What a strange Easterner." The black-haired, brown-eyed member of the Homeland Security Bureau shook his head. The rain in Connecticut came and went in a hurry. When Lucheng strolled to the outdoor cafe, the dark clouds had already dispersed and the sun shone into the wind. Huff. He exhaled and wiped the dense cold sweat on his forehead. He felt both tired and refreshed. That experience just now was great. It was as though he had become a god who controlled his body. He had the confidence to reveal everything within. Is this how it feels to have a breakthrough in Ice Mirror? Encountering gods in the void, self-reflection? Ice Mirror was said to be the most difficult martial arts below physical invulnerability. It was the core control of many of the ice sex martial arts. Not only was it difficult to master, but it was also difficult to improve. After Lucheng completed his transformation and entered the inhuman stage, he thought it would become stronger. who knew that it wouldn't improve at all. But today, he had a breakthrough for no reason because of the rain. After arriving in America and meeting Ko, my body and mind are satisfied. My latent impatience is gone, my mind is stable, and I already have the foundation. Is that why I was able to gain something by chance? Lucheng thought, surprised, delighted, and amused. Damn it! Why does it feel like I'm practicing dual cultivation? He couldn't help but complain. He examined himself again. The rain just now was rather heavy, and he had just made a breakthrough in his control of ice mirror. It was inevitable that he would have trouble controlling his body. There were many wet marks on his body, especially on his hair, which was sticking to his body. However, after walking in the rain for more than 10 minutes, most of his body was dry. It was still unbelievable. Shaking his clothes, Lucheng raised his right hand and wiped his hair, wiping off patches of frost and ice crystals. He switched to his other hand and wiped his hair again. A little mist spread out, and his hair was completely dry. Not bad. Lucheng showed the satisfaction of a full meal. He walked to the bar counter of the cafe and ordered a cup of cappuccino on a whim. He found a table and sat down. Sipping his coffee, he looked at his phone and searched for information on the Jaruga sect in English, leisurely waiting for Yenjika to end her morning class. He had already taken a copy of the relevant information in Chinese from the Ice God sect, but it was still lacking. On the other side in the RV. "Boss, look." The surveillance staff looked up in surprise and shouted to Smith. "What?" Smith put down his cutlery and looked over. His subordinate pointed at the screen and said, "Boss, he walked in the rain for 13.5 minutes, but only a small part of his clothes and pants were wet." Smith approached and carefully examined the playback. When he saw that Lucheng had mistakenly dried his hair with the power of frost and flame, he suddenly understood and explained to himself. This should be some kind of application of his superpower. It's very detailed and wonderful. Write it in the report and add it to the data. Yes, boss. The staff cleared his doubts. At noon, Lucheng met up with Yenjika and Auntie Du. They found a famous old Chinese restaurant and filled their stomachs. After that, the couple left Auntie Du to pass the time and went to the supermarket hand in hand. They went straight to the food section and saw a dazzling array of vegetables, fruits and all kinds of meat. "What do you want to eat?" "It's my treat." Yenjika showed her dimples and smiled sweetly. Lucheng was stunned for a moment and said in annoyance, "I forgot to look at the menu. I don't even know what to ask Auntie Du to cook tonight. Just buy whatever you want." Cough, I didn't think about this at all last night. Forgot to look at the menu. Yenjika gritted her teeth and glared at him. Under the light, her cheeks became redder and redder. She snorted. "What else do you remember?" "Haha, I'll look into it later. When I'm confident, I'll give Auntie Du a day off and we'll cook on our own." Lucheng laughed embarrassedly, avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. The episode passed quickly. Yenjika pulled Lucheng and Lucheng pushed the shopping cart and walked to the front of the meat section. The girl looked at it with interest. She picked up the food and put it in the car with interest. She muttered, "I'm not sure. This steak looks good. This cowboy rib is good too." Lucheng listened in a daze, and then asked with admiration, "You're right. Ku, have you bought here before with Empress Dowager and Auntie Du? Otherwise, how could she choose so quickly and confidently?" Yenjika looked up at him and answered matter-of-factly, "No, it's my first time today." "Then what are your standards?" Lucheng blurted out in surprise. Yenjika glanced at him with a look that said, "Are you stupid?" and said confidently, "Based on the price. Usually the expensive ones are the best ones." "That makes sense." Lucheng was speechless. After getting the affirmation, Yenjika raised her head and put the meat she wanted into the cart. She added, "Look at them. They look better than the ones next to them. The texture is so beautiful." "I can't tell." Lucheng didn't dare to refute. He followed the confident Ku around the food section and watched her pick up the food excitedly. Finally, they went back to the vegetable section to replenish their vitamins and plant fiber. "Ching, what is this?" Yenjika pointed at a piece of green and asked curiously. Lucheng stared at him and answered confidently, "I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know either." I don't even know the words. Yenjika nodded in agreement. After that, they looked at each other and laughed inexplicably. After checking the words and knowing the scientific name, Yenjika still didn't know what it was called. Let's buy some and try it. With Lu Cheng by her side, she was eager to try new things. Just like that, they bought 2 full carts and each pushed one to the checkout section. As they looked at each other, they suddenly had the subtle feeling of starting a family and living together. Their lips curled up. The couple lined up to pay. Although they bought a lot of food, it was not eye-catching because there were many people who bought a week's worth of food in one go here. Being good at using the freezer was a major feature of life in America. After paying the bill, Lu Cheng easily picked up several large bags and followed Yenjika out of the restaurant. After passing by the 2 white students, they went out and waited for Aunt Du to drive over. One of the 2 white students turned around and looked at Lu Cheng's back with a puzzled expression. What happened? The tall, strong, freckled, brown-haired student asked his companion in confusion. Nothing. The blonde youth with thick arms and devil tattoos shook his head. He just felt that the Asian youth with the bags of food looked a little familiar. The freckled brown-haired student didn't dwell on the question and said, George, we can't become martial arts apprentices. Why don't we try out Chinese martial arts? You saw the King of Youth League. Peng and Lu are very good. Let me think about it. The blonde youth frowned in distress. Back at home, Yenjika started her homework, Lu Cheng started his daily exercise, and Du Yen prepared dinner. By the time they finished eating, the sky was already dark. Yenjika went back to her room and turned on the lights, illuminating the room with a faint yellow glow. Just a little more and I'm done. This professor gives the most homework. The girl stretched and complained to Lu Cheng. Then she buried herself in her homework. At this moment, she noticed Lu Cheng bringing a chair over and sitting beside her. He turned on the table lamp to make the light brighter. Then he sat down silently with a book in his hand. He studied it seriously and accompanied her in silence. Cheng, what are you reading? After a few minutes, Yenjika couldn't hide her curiosity and turned her head to ask. Lu Cheng waved the book and smiled. Recipes. Yenjika snorted and pursed her lips. She turned her head and looked to the side. The dimples on her cheeks deepened. She felt that the light in the room was very warm. Chapter 499. Before 8 o'clock, Yenjika finished the rest of her homework. Stretching her arms, she turned to Lu Cheng and asked with a smile. Hello, mister. Do you want to eat cake? Looking at the girl's sparkling eyes and eager face, Lu Cheng chuckled and answered firmly, Yes. Good. I'll make it for you and show you how good I am. Yenjika nodded with satisfaction. She stood up and pinned up her hair with a hairpin. Well, a minute's silence for the materials wasted last night. She went down the stairs to the kitchen and took out a few eggs. She beat them and separated them into a bowl of egg yolks and egg whites. Do you need help? Lu Cheng followed behind her and volunteered. Yenjika rolled her eyes and handed the glass bowl with egg white to Lu Cheng. Then help me beat it. Since Cheng is so sincere, I won't use the egg beater. Okay. Lu Cheng took out a pair of chopsticks and prepared to beat them at a high speed. But at this time he was puzzled and hurriedly asked, What is considered to be evenly distributed? To what extent? I've never made a cake before. When I beat eggs for my mom, it was to make omelets. The requirements should be different, right? Yenjika pondered for a moment, blinked her eyes, and turned around in small steps. She opened a drawer in the kitchen and took out a book. After flipping through a few pages, she said, Beat until thick foam appears. That's it. Why does it feel so unreliable? Seeing this, Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. Noticing his gaze, Yenjika quickly raised her chin and emphasized seriously, You're right. I actually remember it. I flipped the book to make sure it's perfect. Got it. Lu Cheng responded with a smile. His wrist joints moved at a high speed and the chopsticks made a clicking sound. Yenjika was in a daze. After a while, she sighed. Cheng, you're really a human egg beater. This hand speed, this power control, TSK. Then she looked up and thought carefully for a few seconds. She asked Lu Cheng to slow down a little. She took out an apron and started to process the egg yolks. When the foam appeared on Lu Cheng's side, she quickly weighed the sugar and put it in. Then she told him to speed up the mixing. During the whole process, Yinjika came and went, brushing against Lu Cheng's body and rubbing his hair. They looked at each other, full of warmth and joy. Finally, they finished everything. They put the materials into the mold, stuffed it into the oven, and set the time. While waiting, they leaned against each other and chatted about various topics. Occasionally, they would play affectionately. 30 seconds. Yinjika stared at the number on the screen with sparkling eyes. Haha, it must be delicious. Lu Cheng encouraged with anticipation. After they exchanged a few words, sounds could be heard. The cake was about to be baked. Okay. Yinjika turned around spotty. But when she turned around, she saw that Lu Cheng had already pulled open the oven door and took out the cake mold with his bare hands, just like how he usually took out bowls and chopsticks for a meal. SSSSSS. SSSSS. S's. SSSSS. What? Lu Cheng put the cake on the plate. A sweet aroma filled the air. Yinjika answered with a serious expression. It's dangerous. Please don't imitate it. Haha, I'm wearing gloves. Lu Cheng put down the mold and raised his right hand. The surface was covered with white steam. Oh. Yinjika was speechless. She looked at the cake on the table, inhaled the aroma, and nodded seriously. Cheng, I'm so jealous of you. What are you jealous of? Lu Cheng asked in surprise. I'm jealous that you have such a good wife like me. Yinjika raised her arm and tried not to laugh. Haha. Lu Cheng laughed out loud for a while. Yinjika is also a little amused by me. Yinjika passed the spoon to Lu Cheng and said timidly, I want to try but I don't dare. Cheng, try it and tell me how it tastes. Okay. Lu Cheng took a spoonful and chewed for a while. He was intoxicated and praised. Not bad. The sweetness is just right. As he spoke, he extended his arm and put the spoon in front of his little fairy's mouth. Really? Yinjika's eyes were filled with joy. She leaned forward and took a small bite of the cake and tasted it carefully. After 10 seconds, she heaved a sigh of relief and said with a smile, Good, I didn't lose my standard. But the taste isn't as exaggerated as Cheng. Well, I'm in a good mood today. I won't expose his exaggerated acting. Yinjika hurriedly urged him. Hurry up and eat. Cheng, let me tell you, the desserts in America are super sweet. It's like candy is free. I don't particularly like the sweet kind. While chatting and laughing, the couple finished the cake. Of course, Lu Cheng took care of 4/5 of the cake. In the end, he felt a little embarrassed to have increased Aunt Du's workload, so he volunteered to clean up the mess and clean the table. Yinjika watched as Lu Cheng put on an apron and stood in front of the sink. He carefully washed the dishes and wiped them with a special cloth. She leaned against the kitchen door, and her eyes gradually lit up. After a while, her dimples appeared. She leaned over and said confidently, Cheng, I'm here to help you. Following which, sounds of laughter rang out in the kitchen. Lu Cheng's helpless voice could be heard from time to time. You don't have to help. Why are you causing trouble? In the cheerful atmosphere, the two finished cleaning up and returned to the second floor. They each took a shower and lay on the same bed. Yinjika seemed to have forgotten that the room she had arranged for Lu Cheng was next door. She asked with great interest, Cheng, you said that your ice mirror has reached the realm of encountering gods in the void, self-reflection. What's the use of that? My sensing range has increased by at least 50%. My control of my body is so accurate that there's almost no error. If I suffer from internal injuries, the recovery time will be greatly reduced. Also, I can correspondingly stimulate my qi and blood, simplify the fighting formula, and combine it with the path of Azura that I previously comprehended. The explosive power will increase, and the number of times I can use it will increase. Lu Cheng explained tirelessly, half describing for his wife, and half summarizing himself. As for the control of strength and moves, those are just minor details. Oh right, Ku, from tomorrow onwards, I'll teach you the fighting formula. We'll go to bed on time tonight to replenish our energy. Okay, Yinjika replied happily. Her eyes sparkled as she listened to Lu Cheng's explanation. After a pause, she recalled something and quickly asked, "Is there still no news on the wholeness formula?" "No. It's the secret technique of the extreme Hadu sect. I don't think it's that easy to get hold of it. Even the military has to consider many things," Lu Cheng said with a sigh. Just then, a thought came to him, and he suddenly broke into laughter. "I realized there's another use for the ice mirror breakthrough. Haha, I won't talk about it, I won't talk about it. Not suitable for children." Yenjika was instantly filled with curiosity. She asked repeatedly, using both her hands and legs, sometimes threatening and sometimes acting coquettishly. After a round of banter, Lu Cheng raised his hands in surrender and confessed honestly. He said in an extremely academic tone, "Didn't you complain that I'm too old to come out last night?" Using that was a little insensitive. But now that the ice mirror has improved to the self-reflection realm, I can control it to a certain extent. Anyway, with self-adjustment of sensitivity and listening skill, the effect should be pretty good. At first, Yenjika felt shy listening to him, but in the end it turned into a standard dumbfounded look. "Chung, how did you end up in this aspect when practicing martial arts?" "Applying what I've learned." Lu Cheng was just about to give a humorous reply when he was immediately pummeled by delicate punches. At the end of their banter, Yenjika sensed that the atmosphere was a little off. She quickly turned her back to Lu Cheng, buried her face in the pillow, and announced in a muffled voice, "I fell asleep." Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. Thinking of how his girl hadn't slept the entire night, and how she didn't even need to sleep with the help of the swordsman formula, he felt a pang of pity for her. Suppressing the urge, he hugged her from behind and kissed her lightly on the cheek. "Good night. Good night." Yenjika's dimples slowly blossomed. The next morning, the two woke up feeling refreshed. Lu Cheng found a pen and paper and wrote the fighting formula. After finishing his training and breakfast, he continued on to the campus of Connecticut University. After waving goodbye to Yenjika, he took a detour to the Msasi Martial Arts Gym. When he passed by a block, he suddenly heard gunshots. He saw two armed robbers wearing balaclavas running out of the bank in front of him. They seemed to be a white man and a black man. "Hey, is there a chance to crack down on crime?" Lu Cheng's spirits were lifted. He was eager and excited. Just as he was about to make a move, a figure flashed past and knocked over one of the robbers with a bang. The figure was dressed like Superman. Just as he was about to dodge and attack the remaining robber, a net made of silk threads fell from the sky and enveloped his target. Whoosh! 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 Another two figures rushed over. Lu Cheng was a little dumbfounded. There are too many superheroes in America, aren't there? It's just a case of robbing a bank, and there are three of them. In the next block, Smith, who was watching the surveillance footage, laughed out loud. "These two bastards sure are unlucky. Three superheroes happen to be having breakfast nearby." At this point he silently added another sentence. "And a dangerous grade monster passed by." The incident in the morning passed in a flash. Lu Cheng shook his head and left the scene. He had some thoughts in his mind. Since the Americans are so passionate about acting as superheroes, will there be people acting as them? No, let's not talk about acting. Will there be people imitating high-end, perverted criminals? This seems to be their tradition. I have to go back and collect information to see if there are similar criminals in Connecticut. Could it be possible for them to endanger Yenjika? I have to take precautions. Sigh, it's a pity that I'm not familiar with this place. No intelligence, no resources, no evidence, no clues. If I'm not careful, I'll cross the line and be deported. Otherwise, I could really come up with a Connecticut criminal cleanup plan. I'll visit them one by one and blow them up at one point. Lu Cheng's thoughts ran wild as he arrived at the entrance of the Msasi Martial Arts Gym. P.S. Connecticut criminals. Who the F***ck did we offend? Chapter 500. Msasi Martial Arts Arena. As the students participating in the advanced course had decent combat skills, they could easily catch up without any preparation. Therefore, Lu Cheng was assigned to one of the groups by Brooke without much trouble, and was assigned to an exclusive training ground. There was a total of 9 people in the group. There were a total of 9 people in this group, including him. Most of them were young men with strong physiques and natural advantages. Only 3 of them did not belong to this group. One of them was the red-eyed girl, Hathaway, who was more than 1.8 meters tall. From the way the other students were fearful of her, it could be seen that she was not weak and could be considered as a big sister figure. The other one was the middle-aged man with gray hair and sagging cheeks, Cole. Under normal circumstances at his age, he should have chosen the fitness class. However, he trained crazily more than anyone else. His eyes were filled with ferocity, and every punch and kick seemed to be filled with all his strength. As for the third one, it was of course Lu Cheng himself. His muscles were moderate and his strength was hidden. Therefore, he could not fully support his combat suit. Compared to the other students, he was shorter and skinnier. However, the other students did not discriminate or provoke him. Since he could join the advanced course, he must have a good foundation. Their speculations were quickly confirmed by Coach Lin Delo's introduction. This was an Asian kid who had practiced Chinese martial arts. After observing for a while, Lu Cheng gained an intuitive understanding of the fighting techniques of the Juruga sect. They used boxing as their core, mixed with jujitsu and wrestling, and were very good at using the body and restricting the joints. However, this was all part of the basic content, and was not shown at all when it came to the integration of the body's spirituality and the ability to communicate with all living things. With Lu Cheng's current insight, knowledge, and foundation, he joined the training after 20 minutes and got the hang of it quickly. It was as though he had been immersed in it for at least 5 years. Hathaway and the other students were amazed and speechless. Only the middle-aged man, Cole, was not interested in anything else. He treated the void in front of him as his mortal enemy and kept on punching and kicking, making cracking sounds. Not bad. He is already at the level of a professional 9th pin. Why hasn't he become a combat apprentice? Lu Cheng glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. After more than an hour, Coach Lin Delo announced that the combat training had come to an end. Everyone entered the room at the side and began to awaken their spirituality. This was also the reason why the advanced course was worth $5,000 and why there were so many applicants. After entering the room, Hathaway picked up the corresponding towel and wiped the sweat off her forehead. She glanced at the shy and introverted Asian boy Lu Cheng. He was calm and composed with barely any sweat on his forehead. It seemed like he was just warming up. How magical. She looked at the other students and started whispering to them, attributing everything to the mysterious Chinese martial arts. Actually, I was really just warming up. Lu Cheng could vaguely sense what they were thinking and said to himself in amusement. At this time, Coach Lin Delo closed the door, stood in the center, and said to the 9 students sitting around him. He looked at the 9 students in front of him and said to them, "The strength of the body is the key to strengthening the own spirit. However, it is also the cage that restricts us from awakening the own spirit. Therefore, we need to strengthen our body through hard training and let it fall into a state of fatigue to reduce the interference. Your current state is very suitable for the awakening training." He had said similar words many times in the past. However, as there was a new student joining them today, he had to say it again. Her body was tired, but her spirit was still excited. Hathaway followed the breathing rhythm that Lin Delo taught her, and slowly adjusted her breathing. She gradually felt a strange sense of calmness in her heart. At that moment, Lin Delo pressed the remote control and let the surrounding sound system play a sacred and melodious melody. He was guiding the students to become more relaxed. When she was extremely relaxed, Hathaway felt like her spirit was floating. She seemed to have seen the spirituality that belonged to her. However, she was still unable to awaken it and communicate with it. Isn't this meditating? However, there is a subtle difference. It seems to have some application of self-hypnosis mixed in. Lu Cheng experienced the attempt to awaken the own spirit with great interest. His consciousness was above and looked down at his body. He grasped every change in it without missing anything. He was like a god that ruled over this body. Yes, this is not called own spirit. It should be called own spirit. Encountering God in the void, God is oneself. Half an hour later, Linda Luo stopped playing the ethereal music and said to the few disappointed students, "Let's go." Don't try anymore. Otherwise, you will lose yourself. After saying that, he took out a dark red box that seemed to be used to store jewelry. Yes, it was really a box used to store jewelry. After opening it, there was a blue gem lying inside. This is a sapphire that my teacher, Mr. Joseph, the Grandmaster of Martial Arts, made. He used the own spirit as the main source of the polishing and gave it a certain level of spirituality. Try to communicate with it and tell me what you feel. This is the practice of communicating with the spirituality of all things. It can help you awaken the own spirit, said Lindello seriously. He was a black-haired Caucasian man who was less than 30 years old. He was obviously of Latin descent. The lines on his face looked like they were carved by knives and axes. According to the order, the middle-aged man, Cole, was the first to receive the gem. He communicated with it quietly for a while before opening his eyes and revealing his grayish-white pupils. I feel a patch of blue. Lindello nodded slightly and didn't comment. He let Cole pass the message clockwise. I feel like I'm touching water. I almost couldn't breathe just now. Waves, waves, I see waves. After a few people, the object of spirituality was in the hands of the extremely curious Lu Chung. He imitated the other students and placed the gem in his palm. He placed it horizontally on his left chest and closed his eyes. Focusing his thoughts, he reflected in the ice mirror. His mind slowly descended and came into contact with the gem. It seemed to surround and envelop it. Ripples appeared in his heart lake. Within the ice mirror, a crashing sound could be heard. It was a surging sea that filled the surroundings. It was deep blue, layered, and dimly glowing. Essence. Charm. These two words popped up in Lu Cheng's mind. He felt that this sapphire was very similar to the paper on which he had written the fighting formula. However, there were subtle differences. There are 3,000 paths, but they all lead to the same destination. He suddenly remembered a saying in a cultivation classic. His mind and consciousness immersed in the gem, wanting to explore more. With a crashing sound, the waves of the blue sea surged and churned to the bottom. There was a layer of blood-like water. Thick, sticky, stinky, cruel, evil, and many other sensations appeared in Lu Cheng's ice mirror, creating exaggerated ripples and hideous cracks. Lu Cheng responded in his mind. He visualized the ice spirit holy light and moved a little forward. The blood flow immediately retreated, and the ice mirror regained its stability. The blue sea once again covered everything, except for the coldness. It seemed to have two poles. What's going on? When the Grandmaster of Martial Arts Joseph was polishing the gem, he couldn't control his emotions and allowed the negative things to taint his spirituality. Moreover, this evil feeling was buried very deep. It would be difficult to detect or trigger the changes if one wasn't of a similar level. Experts of a similar level wouldn't have the time to study the spiritual item that Joseph was polishing for his disciple. Lu Cheng was still in a state where he didn't know much about the awakening and polishing of the Jaruga sect. It was hard for him to figure out the real reason. He opened his eyes and briefly explained his feelings. The sea. Lin Deluo's eyes were filled with surprise. After a while he nodded and said, "That's right. This Asian kid's spirituality is very strong." Seeing that no one noticed anything unusual, Lu Cheng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He passed the sapphire to Othaway, who was beside him. Othaway got into position and communicated with him silently for a while. She opened her eyes happily and replied, "Coach, I see an iceberg." While Lu Cheng was speechless, Lin Deluo shook his head with a sour expression. "Othaway, you've regressed." Othaway's smile instantly collapsed. The two following students, one saying cold, and the other saying deep water, witnessed the remnants of Lu Cheng's influence gradually fading away without them realizing it. After the practice of own spirit came to an end, Lu Cheng and the rest started their combat training again. This allowed him to re-understand the foundation of his martial arts from different perspectives and concepts. From there, he could find problems that he couldn't detect in the past. Stones from other mountains can be used to attack jade. At 11:30 p.m., Lin Deluo announced the end of the class for the day. If anyone wanted to come in the afternoon, they could do an hour of free practice. Lu Cheng didn't have the time to care about the other students. He took a shower, changed his clothes, and returned to Connecticut University to have lunch with Yen Zhika. With his company, Du Yen had the time to do something of her own. After noon, Du Yen returned and the girl re-entered the classroom. Lu Qing found the nearest cafe and asked for an iced latte. As he drank, he used the local internet to search for famous criminals in Connecticut. The first thing that came into his view was a scary guy known as the God Slayer. He committed crimes all over America, not just in Connecticut. He took pleasure in killing famous superheroes. Other than that, there was no pattern to his crimes. Until now, he hadn't been caught. This guy probably has the strength of a physical invulnerability expert. Lu Qing exclaimed. However, the God Slayer targeted powerful superheroes. It was almost impossible for him to affect Cuckoo, so he didn't need to be wary of him. Lu Qing swiped his thumb and looked at the search results again. Every year, the nightmare would randomly kill people. His targets have no pattern. The only thing that can be confirmed is that when the corpse is found, the forehead will be slit vertically, and there seems to be an additional bloody eye. According to the police report, there was once a person who tried to commit a crime to escape the law. In the end, he provoked the nightmare and became the next victim. From the limited 2 encounters, this guy is considered a veteran grandmaster of martial arts in America. He's similar to our Inhuman. No leads, no leads. Lu Qing sipped his coffee in frustration. His plan to clean up criminals had been foiled before it even started. He didn't even know who the culprit was. Out of habit, he continued to scroll down. He saw that there were cases of 2 to 4 female high school students and below disappearing every year. After years of police investigation, they could basically confirm that the culprit was the same person, codenamed Butcher. On the list of suspects listed online, Lu Qing saw a familiar name. A Joseph? Joseph from the Msasi Martial Arts Gym? In an ordinary car on the street, Smith looked at the surveillance camera and asked his subordinates, "Can you find out what he's seen?" "Yes, but you need to use the Skynet, boss," answered the guy wearing a baseball cap casually. Chapter 501. Joseph. Seeing this name, Lu Qing immediately recalled his experience of communicating with the gemstone spiritual object in the morning. He remembered the sticky, smelly, evil, and cruel blood. That was a gemstone polished by martial artist Johnny Joseph with his own spirit. The tainted deep spirituality seemed to have originated from the negative factors at the bottom of his heart or his prolonged emotional loss. Thinking of this, Lu Qing perked up. He began to research why Joseph was listed as a suspect. The blood of a missing girl, Taylor, was found in the woods near his villa. His ex-wife spread the word that he believed in the devil, and that he had cult books like the Pure Girl's Spirit at home. Another victim, Sonny's boyfriend, accused him of seeing figures similar to Joseph around the scene of the possible disappearance. However, the broken camera couldn't provide any evidence. Reading line by line, Lu Qing realized that these clues couldn't clearly prove that Joseph was the culprit. They couldn't even make him undergo a strict investigation. However, combined with the abnormality of the sapphire, he was somewhat confident. In an ordinary sedan on the street, a young man in a baseball cap was typing rapidly on the keyboard. "Boss, he's looking at famous criminals and cases in Connecticut." Smith was stunned. He took the laptop from his subordinate and slid his index finger across the touchscreen, reading the content that Lu Qing had read. This was feedback from the internet service provider. What is he planning to do? Does he want to play the role of a superhero? Asked the young man in the baseball cap, seeking to communicate. After a moment of silence, Smith slowly opened his mouth. This is probably the hobby of Chinese martial artists. In Chinese it's called qia, or learn from each other. He uttered the words he had learned during his research over the past few days in a strange accent. He then added, "Don't our mixed martial arts masters like challenges as well?" "I think I get it. He's looking for a challenge that won't get him kicked out of the game." The young man in the baseball cap was enlightened. "Boss, you have to think of a way to warn him. Don't make this a big deal." Smith nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. He returned the laptop to his subordinate and pointed outside. "I'll go get a cup of hot coffee. Do you want one?" No need. Can I have some Coke? The young man in the baseball cap smiled brightly. After getting out of the car, Smith went to another shop and bought a cup of steaming black coffee. Then he took the elevator to the top floor and entered the rooftop. Leaning against the edge, he silently looked down at the building opposite. The short building was called Msasi Martial Arts Arena. A few minutes later, the door of the rooftop was opened. The gray-haired middle-aged man, Cole, appeared with a bag of things in his hand. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were cold. Smith. Cole was stunned for a second before he let out a sigh. You're here again. Smith picked up the cup, downed the remaining coffee that had cooled down, and smiled bitterly. Uncle Cole, how have you been? I still haven't awakened my own spirit, and I still haven't become Joseph's combat apprentice. Cole took out a can of beer, opened it with a bang, and took a deep gulp. The pale yellow beads of water flowed down his chin, which he had forgotten to shave, past his grayish-white and messy beard stubble, and fell to the ground, breaking into 8 pieces. Smith opened his mouth, as though he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say a word. He crushed the cup into a ball, turned around, and left the rooftop. He found a supermarket and bought a can of Coke for his subordinate. He instructed him to go home and rest, to ensure that he had enough energy to wait for his next shift. As for the other members of the team, they were sent off to do other things. After studying for a long time, Luching suddenly broke into laughter. He was mocking himself for being too engrossed in his role. Even if he was fairly certain that martial artist Johnny Joseph was the criminal butcher, who had been active for more than a decade, he could still pay him a visit with peace of mind. However, if he couldn't find any concrete evidence, it would be very troublesome to clean up the mess. This was a veteran mighty one with a relatively high status. In this way, if he was not careful, he would become a criminal. In a place where he was unfamiliar with the people and there were not many resources to borrow, not to mention the serious consequences, the lightest punishment would be deportation, and his visa would be denied. This would contradict his most important request. Should he seek help from the military? They definitely have an intelligence network in America. But how should he ask? As the thought flashed through his mind, Luching had already simulated the most likely conversation. I'm going to deal with Johnny Joseph. I need intelligence support. Why? He's a perverted criminal. He might endanger my wife. Oh, does he know your wife? No. Does his target group include your wife? No. Then why do you want to deal with him? Do you understand? There's a certain possibility. A small possibility. I want to take precautions. Please forgive me for not understanding your train of thought. Luching shook his head and mocked himself when he thought of a similar scenario. He temporarily put aside the idea of visiting the butcher. Joseph's target should only be young girls. He wouldn't be able to find college students, not to mention Ku, who was just one of the many female college students. Even though perverted criminals like him are detestable, and everyone has the right to kill them, and I also have a sense of justice, I still have to consider the actual situation. Luching picked up his iced latte and drank the last mouthful. Seeing that it was still early, he decided to head to the Msasi Martial Arts Gym for another hour of free practice. I can't relax my expectations of myself just because I'm already an inhuman, and my strength is internalized. Even if I don't train, my realm won't regress. My target has never been an inhuman. The past doesn't count. Picking up his phone, Luching walked out of the cafe. Just as he was about to identify the road, a car suddenly appeared in front of him and slowly stopped by the roadside. Hello, Lu, greeted the driver with a smile. Who's that? Luching looked over in confusion. He felt that the young and sunny face was a little familiar, but in his eyes most foreigners looked the same. You asked me for directions yesterday, Smith reminded him. Oh, it's you. Luching suddenly remembered. Then a thought came to him and he blurted out. How do you know my surname is Lu? At that moment his hair stood on end. He was like a monster that was about to pounce. His natural aura made Smith shiver. He almost lost control of his body and abandoned the car to escape. Taking a deep breath, Smith maintained his smile. He took out his identification and introduced himself. I'm Smith from the Department of Homeland Security. I'm in charge of monitoring your activities in Connecticut. His actions didn't violate the regulations. Such monitoring could be communicated with the target. Reminders and warnings were given first to let Chinese martial artists know that they were under the strict supervision of the state apparatus. This could effectively reduce the occurrence of violent incidents and nip the problem in the bud. However, follow-up monitoring wouldn't be reduced because of this. They would detect and prevent unforeseen events at the first instance. This was actually the most common method used by many experienced agents when they received similar missions. However, Smith was a greenhorn and had a bit of aggressiveness. Hence, he chose to monitor in secret. Lu Qing was stunned for a second. From the corner of his eye, he saw his image playing on the screen of the computer in the passenger seat. He was convinced. Can I verify your identification number? Just as he finished speaking, he saw the corner of Smith's mouth twitch. It was as if he heard the other party shouting about the trust between people. Sure. Smith maintained his expression and answered in a deep voice. Lu Qing searched for a way to verify. After confirming, he nodded and asked, Mr. Smith, why are you looking for me? He had long heard and could reasonably deduce that martial artists of his level would be monitored when they entered the United States. That was why he was so cautious about his words and actions. He didn't randomly challenge others to learn from. Now that he had met the head of the Secret Service in charge of monitoring him, he finally felt relieved. Lou, let's talk in the car. Smith picked up the computer and pointed at the passenger seat. Lu Qing was bold and had a clear conscience. He immediately pulled open the car door, sat in, and fastened his seatbelt. Smith was dumbfounded by this small action. It was like a magical fantasy. Why would a monster like this need a seatbelt? He calmed himself down, started the car, and drove to another street. After a moment of thought, he said, Lou, you're investigating famous criminals in Connecticut. You want to spar with them? So that's why he's here to warn me. Lu Qing seemed to come to a realization. He chuckled. It's just a casual investigation. I've always been law-abiding. As though he didn't hear his explanation, Smith continued. Actually, we still have some evidence on Joseph, more than what has been revealed. However, we can't form a complete chain of evidence. He's also a veteran martial artist with status and connections. He's on good terms with many senators and lawyers. We can't apply for a search warrant. Sunny is a very intelligent girl. According to the Jaruga sect, her father once heard the remnants of her cries and screams around Joseph's villa. He believed that there must be a criminal case and evidence buried there. As long as we could enter and search, we would definitely be able to find clues and arrest Joseph. But no one listens to us. It's been 5 years since a superhero tried to infiltrate Joseph's villa, but he was discovered and sent to prison. In recent years, whenever Joseph goes out, he'll get his students to guard the villa. He's also installed a high-tech surveillance and alarm system. Superheroes and detectives rarely interfere. Lu Qing fell into deep thought. He nodded slowly. You want me to visit Joseph, challenge him, defeat him, and give you a chance to search for evidence? You can say that, Smith replied in a deep voice. But what if you fall out with him? What if you don't admit to it? And what does this have to do with Homeland Security? Lu Qing wouldn't trust a stranger's words so easily. Everything would be fine if they could find evidence. But what if they couldn't? The other party could simply be using him, and wouldn't help to eliminate any future problems. Smith tilted his head and looked at Lu Qing. His deep-set eyes were filled with sorrow and pain. I'll take care of the alarm system here. If we can't find any evidence, as long as you disguise yourself well and don't let Joseph get hurt too badly, this will just be an ordinary attack case involving a superhero. That we can't find any suspects. I can cover it up. At this point, he took a deep breath and said, when you were searching for information, you should have seen the photo of the victim, Sunny, and her boyfriend. You should have seen him being interviewed. Lu Qing's memories lit up. The photo of the blonde girl's boyfriend flashed across his mind. Gradually, they overlapped with the head of the Secret Service before him. Judging from the time, Smith must have joined the national apparatus because of this matter. Lu Cheng's wariness was mostly gone. He began to believe Smith's words. Retracting his gaze, Smith looked ahead. I know this is a difficult choice for you. Joseph is also a dangerous monster. You might not be able to win against him. Besides, you can only defeat him and not kill him. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Lu Cheng light up his phone from the corner of his eye. He calmly buried his head and focused on watching a video. It was a compilation of Joseph's battles from the past year. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.